Corey, we're ready to go when you are. Corey's ready? Thank you, thank you. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a full house tonight. It is Monday, September 23rd, 2019, and I welcome you to Committee of the Whole. We'll start tonight with regrets. No one has regrets this evening. Amendments to the agenda. I understand we have one. Ms. Costello?
Relocation of October 16th Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. So we will add priority item 8, HIJK, thank you, for relocation of a committee meeting. And it's the October 16th meeting. Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none. Disclosure of monetary interests. Mayor Pankow?
Yes, in-camera item 7A, litigation. I have a pecuniary interest with an individual identifiable within that litigation. Will be remove myself from any discussions.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Item 7A, I have a pecuniary interest in that item as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Hearing none. We will move on to get delegations, and I welcome Mr. Samir and Mr. Lawrence and Miss Richardson, if they are in attendance, to join us at the podium.
I am not Mr. Lawrence, and I am not Miss Richardson, so you can guess which one I am. Christine Fair, the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, is with us. She thought it'd be nicer if I spoke, because she's very, car dealers, aggressive. So Leslie Richardson is the General Manager of the Chamber of Commerce. My name is Chris Samir. I've been around town for a few years. I'm the past president of the Smith-Olson District Chamber of Commerce. I've been involved with Victoria Park for, I've lost all track, 10, 15 years anyway, personally involved with Victoria Park. So, the Smith-Olson District Chamber of Commerce respectfully requests that the Mayor and Council of the Town of Smith-Falls reverse the decision to relocate Victoria Park Campground and to hold a public meeting to discuss the relocation or any future of the Victoria Park Campground. That's our ask. Victoria Park Campground opened its current location in 1925. The purpose of the campground in 1925 was to boost tourism for the town of Smith Falls, a role which it still does to this day, some 94 years later. The trend of recreational vehicles, RVs, trailers, campers, whatever you wish to call them, continues to be on the rise. In 2017, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
We're good? Can the people outside? No? They're fine. In 2017, the total revenue for RV tourism in Canada was $3.3 billion. B with a billion with a B. The Campground Chamber, Town, and Parks Canada all play a role in our community of promoting tourism. Using Stats Canada figures, the campground contributes approximately $1.7 million annually to our local economy. Our guests visit our local restaurants, grocery stores, retail stores, and shop downtown. The campground is also the first point of contact for boaters traveling down the canal and docking with us. This year, the campground tourism program was redesigned to highlight all the local attractions and businesses and to ensure that these transient dollars stay in our community and do not travel onwards to our neighboring communities, similar to some of the other people that occupy the area of the campground. The Chamber hosts an annual appreciation barbecue in Victoria Park each year, and our attendance is rapidly growing. The Chamber can commit to providing ongoing social programs in the park that will engage the community and continue to promote tourism. The campground attracts approximately 10,900 overnight tourists each year, 87% of which are transit and stay an average of 3 days. Transient means that they're not seasonal campers. We have we have roughly 7 seasonal sites. So there used to be the old perception that it was all just a local club that everybody stayed there, 50 people. No, we have 43 of our sites are for transient daily visitors. In 2012, the Economic Development Department undertook 3 critical master planning initiatives through a grant from the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. These were the development of the Waterfront Trail, the Community Improvement Program, and Downtown Revitalization and Waterfront Integration Master Plan, which I'm going to mostly speak of. The first mention of moving Victoria Park can be found in the final report of the Downtown Revitalization and Waterfront Integration Master Plan. This report was produced by EDA Collective Incorporated from Toronto. These consultants from Toronto were in town for 2 days, 48 hours, 2 days. I've been here roughly 19,000, just in case anybody wants to do a little bit of comparison, but to conduct stakeholder consultations with individuals, businesses, and public bodies with a vested interest in the study area. The first clue that this plan was created by someone with an urban background and not local to our community can be found on page 19 of this report, where the consultant says, or states, Smith Falls is well positioned to serve as a service center for those traveling between highways 401 and 407 along the Rideau Canal. I did not do well in geography, but I don't think that point exists, but anyway. The second clue of the author's urban background is found on page 34, items 3.6.4. The concept plan for Victoria Park will also maximize the usable public open space by relocating the mobile home park to another suitable location. Victoria Park will transform into a passive recreation area with naturalized planting and bioswales. This statement makes me wonder if the author of this document actually knows the difference between a campground and a mobile home park. And I had to look up what a bioswale was, because I was quite interested to see what the park's going to look like. And bioswale is apparently all the cattails and everything that we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres on the other side of the Bascule Bridge. So that's just what we need, some more bioswale. The report continues to talk about a gateway feature of Victoria Park where the town will tear down the house that they have recently purchased on the corner of Lombard Street that has become an eyesore over the last few years. It appears to be someone's vision that the recreational vehicles in Victoria Park will take away from the grand vision of boats on the canal. I'm not sure, but the canal is quite a bit lower, so you don't actually see the boats quite like that, but it is it's a beautiful concept. How does council and the general public feel about this vision? The most important statement of this master plan is found on page 57, item 5.0, implementation strategy. The key move in Victoria Park is the relocation of the existing campground to another site in close proximity to the canal and downtown if possible. 2 potential alternate locations include the properties owned by Parks Canada on Lombard Street, which is between the Best Western and the Restaurant, and William Street West is where the real deal is. These and other potential locations for the campground should be investigated for feasibility to accommodate this function. The Downtown Revitalization and Waterfront Integration Master Plan was adopted by Council under Bylaw 8676-2013 on May 6, 2013 by then Mayor Dennis Staples and 3 other councillors, Sean Panko, Jay Brennan, and Don Quinn. In speaking with former Mayor Dennis Staples and councillors Jay Brennan, Don Quinn, they acknowledged that they adopted the policies and guidelines of this document and did not discuss or debate each item as they considered it to be a living document and to be amended as council saw fit in the future. It is quite clear that Parks Canada did not initiate the discussions of relocating Victoria Park Campground and that staff believed they were following their marching orders as per the strategic plan. The most interesting fact about anything to do with Victoria Park Ground in this report is what the report doesn't say. It simply does not mention anything about Parks Canada wanting to close the campground. It was the vision of several consultants from Toronto, they're from Toronto, who did not understand the financial spin-offs received by the community from these 50 campers and 100 guests on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis from May to October. The campground holds more tourists during the busy seasons than the Best Western Hotel. The Chamber has reviewed documents to determine if Council of 2015 to 2018 has ever discussed the closure or relocation of Victoria Park Campground other than the presentation by the Chamber in June 2018, at which time we highlighted the economic benefits and spin-offs associated with the campground. No discussions were found. It still has not been determined when Parks Canada first corresponded with the town of Smith Falls to state that they did not want the campground to remain in its current location. It appears the first correspondence that we see is in 2017, which is approximately 4 years after the downtown revitalization and waterfront integration plan was completed, and became an action item in the 2015 to 2018 strategic plan. It appears the easiest way to get the campground moved is to make Parks Canada the scapegoat. But the cost of relocating Victoria Park Campground would make any taxpayer ask, why would anybody want this? Ms. Miller is going to provide a presentation later this evening called Economic Development and Tourism Strategy 2019 to 2022. And on page 15, under action items, is the relocation of Victoria Park Campground by the fourth quarter of 2020, which means next, roughly a year from now. And yet there is no budget for this relocation, which I dabble in construction a little bit and estimate the cost will be $700,000 to $800,000. And the only question I ask is, why would we do this as a town? The Downtown Revitalization and Waterfront Integration Master Plan has some excellent ideas and should be treated as a living document. And such items as the relocation of Victoria Park Campground should involve public discussion. The closing of Confederation Bridge was brought up here, which is another tragedy of this master plan. Where is the best place for Victoria Park Campground? Right where it sits today. Yes, it needs some improvements and a connecting pathway, but we as a community need to understand that Victoria Park Ground has been adding value to our community in its current location since 1925. The Chamber has a vision for the park moving forward. As Smith Falls looks to position itself as an international destination for cannabis tourism, the Chamber would like to officially add the campground to the list of accommodations that are cannabis friendly. This fits exceptionally well with the targeted cannabis tourists who will enjoy our scenic canal and be able to truly get away and relax. The Chamber intends to purchase 4 RVs, trailers, campers, whatever you prefer to call them, units that that'll actually front onto Abbott Street. The ones where we have those lovely construction gentlemen with their beer out on the table and their very nice physiques out there. Maybe we could clean that up and make that look nice from Abbott Street actually with our own vehicles there. So the units will be listed on Airbnb and will add much needed inventory to our seasonal tourists. Below we have created several designs, which you can see here, sorry. We have created several designs for what the new park that feature a welcoming entrance that is accessible by foot off of Lombard and Abbott Streets and has a clearly defined path that will encourage pedestrians, not just campers, but all people to stroll and explore the area. I'm coming. Holy. Again, the Smith Falls and District Chamber of Commerce respectfully requests that the Mayor and Council of the Town of Smith Falls hold a public meeting to discuss the relocation of Victoria Park Campground and to make the decision to leave it where it sits today. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Samir. So tonight, because of our full agenda, I don't think we'll add this to a priority item. We'll forward the priority item to a future committee of the whole.
I'm available anytime, next week, the week after, whatever is good.
Thank you, Chris. And we will let you know. But if council does have questions, maybe we can start with those. And to start, Chris, I just have one point of clarification. My understanding is that the chamber has been in discussions with town staff until very recently about the campground. Can you summarize kind of what your takeaway has been from those discussions and whether or not the discussions have been the impetus for why you are here tonight?
It's, once we determined that it wasn't actually Parks Canada, that, that's the road we were taking down. Oh, Parks Canada wants you to relocate. Parks Canada does own the land. And then once we did all the homework and realized, oh, it wasn't Parks Canada, it was actually town staff that went to Parks Canada and suggested that, I don't know what we're trying to get out of it, but that's what spurred it on. It's perfect where it is. I have no idea, and I'd love to hear somebody's idea of what could be better than what's there, especially on, we're looking for tourism, and so where do we move it? Well, we've looked at several spots. Jennifer's been very helpful on trying to work on where we could relocate, and there are possibilities, but you know what? When you see an error created, you sometimes have to ask why. Why are we even thinking about relocating it? Oh, and then one council says to another council, well, they passed this motion. Well, no, nobody ever discussed it. That's the real, there's a travesty right here. It's a problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Chris. Questions? Councillor Brennan to
Yeah,
start.
thanks, Chris, and I've been around for a bit and on a chamber rep for
A
the
long
last
time.
8 years, yeah. And this has come up a number of times. My question is this, and not rhetorical, but your initial ask was for a public meeting, which I support, but also to reverse the decision of council. Well, quite frankly, this council's never decided, never discussed, never debated the value of the park. So I look forward to that discussion in a future CAL.
Thank you. Any other questions? None? All right. Oh, Councillor Allen?
Just one, the Airbnb idea with the three three. was
Four,
it three?
probably four, so that we can screen it nicely. We can plant flowers around them, make them
Yeah.
look
I think
aesthetically pleasing.
the last year, or maybe it was the year before, the chamber also was thinking of having an area that might be open for tenting. Is that something that you've looked at in your?
Parks Canada kind of squashed that idea. They don't like the tent evicts. They found there's too much maintenance. They don't last well. They have one in what is it called? Somewhere in Montreal, and the maintenance on them is just atrocious. That they weren't standing up to the Canadian
Oh,
winters.
I meant people bringing their own.
Oh, they
you're
could
thinking-
certainly. Anybody can tent anytime they want. No problem at all. I think that is. I'm not speaking out of turn, Gail. No, tenting's certainly not an issue at Victoria Park.
So so there's a site and they would just put their tent on the site, is that what you're saying?
Sarah Gail knows more about it than I do, so.
Oh,
Yes, all the sites are available for RVs and tents. We do have specific sites that are strictly for tents because there's trees on there. We
Right.
couldn't put an RV in there.
Right,
So
yeah, okay, I
those
didn't know that.
ones are specifically used for tents, but every site can be used for a tent.
okay, thank you.
Gail Berry is the Victoria Park campground manager. She has been for as long as I can remember. 13 years. So they live in Florida during the winter and then come back here and live in Smith Falls during the summer. So it's she's very personally involved in the campground.
Mayor Pankow?
Thanks for the presentation, Chris and Leslie. As you'll see if you're around later tonight, we have a new economic development tourism strategy, and cannabis tourism as a step that goes along, I guess, hand in hand with that. So we value the benefits of having accommodations choices for people coming into our community. I think that's absolutely positive. Your discussion regarding how did this all originate, I've been here since 2010, and I know in 2010 there were a number of master plans which were worked on before I was on council, and the 2013 Downtown Revitalization Waterfront Integration Master Plan evolved from those discussions in 2010. I don't have all the details. My suspicion is Parks Canada probably picked up that document and saw something that fits what their objectives are for their lock stations and their waterfront throughout the system. And so we'll have a deeper discussion on this in a couple of weeks, but overall, I'm sure all the council agrees that we have a high regard for the work the chamber does, the opportunity it brings to the chamber as a source of revenue and promotion to our community, and thirdly, say the choice of having a place for people to stay. So I don't know what the overall outcome will be. We'll have a discussion in a couple of weeks, but I certainly want to, I guess, reinforce how important this is to us.
And I don't blame town staff. Originally, I was very I kind of blamed town staff, but I didn't realize, like, CAO Morris wasn't here at the time. Mr. Manhire, can't remember your official title, so I won't bother. Mr. Manhire wasn't here at the time. So basically, somebody picked this document up, dusted it off, and said, oh, this has already been approved by council, let's just go ahead and use it as our playbook. And unfortunately, Victoria Park was the victim of that.
Yeah, and earlier today, I'd actually had tried to go through the public drive and pull some documents out. It was back in January of 2013, before the formal presentation to council, was the initial presentation by the consultants, and it referred to at that point in time as well. So it's not a new story, but it's one that's, I guess, evolved to some extent, but never been totally acted upon.
Thank you. Councillor Alfred?
Thanks, Chris and Leslie. It's a very nice document. Just a couple of things that occur to me now that you had sent us the presentation, but I hadn't seen all the detail until just now, when Leslie handed me the lovely document. Just a couple of things that you might want to think about. When as I was going through the original one that you refer to quite often, I agree with you, this consultant was from Toronto.
Correct.
But I thought it was a typo, and it was between 401 and 417. I didn't interpret it the way you did.
407, actually, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the toll road near Toronto, yeah. I
Yes,
thought it was
understood, yeah.
417.
No,
And 401.
unfortunately, no.
Well, I think that was the typo, that's how I interpreted it.
I don't know, when did the 416 come in? I don't know, like, no,
417.
the 416, no, that would be the crossroad to go from the 401 to the
Yeah,
417, so.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just didn't see it the way that you did when I saw the original one.
Okay,
There is a lot to think about with this, and I am, you and I have discussed this on
100.
several times, and we have to keep in mind that however we got here, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that this was coming from past, however this evolved, we are here today, and today we have a letter from Parks Canada, and that's what this council has in front of it. So I ask you to, and we'll be talking about that obviously, but this council has, as was in the previous strategic plan, and I admire strategic planning, I believe in it, because if you don't plan the work and work the plan, you'll go off center. So this relocation business has been in two now, the previous one and this one, and however we got here, we do have a letter from the federal government. So I just ask you to remember that when we go into these discussions.
correct, but it might be easy for now, maybe we should change, put our shoe on the other foot now and maybe lobby the federal government instead of saying, yeah, let's close the park. Let's lobby backwards, let's go the other direction this time.
Yeah, and that may be how, when we debate this, that may be how it turns out, but in front of this council is a letter from the federal government.
Every
Just
meeting
want you to
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, when every meeting that I went to with town staff and other members of the chamber, it was Parks Canada would start out, well, you people asked for it, as in the town of Smith Falls staff asked for it. So that's not, when somebody asks for something, sometimes they'll get it. And maybe we should look at it, maybe we should have a public meeting, discuss all of this, and discuss, like, the restaurant, for example. Do you know how many dollars on the weekend they generated at that campground? It's astronomical. And that'll hurt a man's business, but maybe it won't hurt them too much, but maybe they'll go to somewhere else if we move them to Lower Reach Park or something, so.
But
It's,
we'll have a fulsome discussion, I'm sure,
we
at
certainly
council.
will, and
But-
obviously tonight's
but-
not the night, but.
Yeah, no, tonight's not the night, so I won't ask any more questions.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Councillor McGuire?
Thank you, Leslie and Chris. I've always been impressed by the numbers at the campground. More people staying there than live in town in a summer, and 87% are only staying 3 days. Maybe we could call them short-term stays instead of transients. I don't know. Sounds good.
Okay, transients, maybe we could, no, we're not gonna, yes, that would be, short-term stays would be fine.
How's the 1.7 million calculated?
It's using stats, 10,009, everybody, there's not too many people that come by themselves, so we're using X number of nights, are using our occupancy rates, and then there's so much for, obviously, accommodations, but meals, entertainment, everything else. There's a StatsCan has numbers for that. And you could even go into the 3.6 factor, that they spend 1.7 million in town, and so that actually works out closer to $6 or $7 million that revolves around the community. We could get into that game all day long and spin, chase our tails, but that's StatsCan numbers.
Okay, I'd love to get an email.
I used standard household
Oh.
expenditures and then adjusted them for the fact that we're dealing with tourists.
Our treasurer, sorry.
We're going to spend more on
Yeah.
meals
Nikki.
and things like that.
Can I get
Sorry,
a
for the sake of the mic, Chris, can you just reiterate what that point was and who made it? Thank you.
Oh, okay, Mike, what did you just say? Whisper to me, as we say. Mike is our treasurer. He is a CPA, CA, whatever. So he used the StatsCan, our exact same thing I think I said. Did I say something different? So there's credibility to that. And you'd like a copy of that,
Yeah,
sir?
I'd love to get a copy.
We'll certainly prepare that.
maybe all council, just so we're on the same page?
I certainly will.
Thank you, Chris.
My second question is, I think, more suited for CEO Morris. The ask is that we reverse the decision to relocate the Victoria Park ground, and I'm not sure we made a decision. Just procedurally, the difference of reversing versus making a decision is relevant, so I'm wondering where we're at.
Yeah, so through the chair, council made a decision to put an item in the strategic plan to examine relocating the park, but council hasn't made that decision yet. So there is no decision to reverse.
So there's no reversing a decision. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna, do you have comments? Not tonight? Okay. Chris and Leslie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I will say just one thing before you go. Excuse me. I don't want to shy away from the fact that I was pivotally involved in
yes,
this
you were,
original
sorry.
plan. But I hear what you're saying, and I think the point that you made tonight that resonated the most with me, and I think it's lost on a lot of people in this community, is that the master plan document was never intended to be legally binding. It's not a legally enforceable document as applicable law, and it's a vision, and it's adopted and held to account by council, should we choose to accept that as our vision. But there's nothing that limits us from drifting away from it, altering it, making amendments as we see fit. So I'm hoping that as we have our fulsome discussions in the coming weeks, that the chamber will be present for that, and that we can have a more robust discussion about where we go from here. So, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councillor Alfred?
Yeah, I just, again, sort of back to the point I was trying to make is whatever decision or public meeting, it's not our land, it's Parks Canada land, so I'm not sure where the public meeting, I get what you're asking for, but I'm not sure we're in
Councillor
charge
Alfred, I
of
think
the
that's probably a
public meeting.
great discussion that we can have when it's a priority item, when it comes back.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. All right, so our next item on our agenda is another delegation, and I would like to invite Tammy Keeley-Donaldson. Hi, Tammy.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Nadine's going to get you set up.
Thanks. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. As was mentioned, my name is Tammy Keeley-Donaldson, and I'm the Children's Services Manager for Lanark County. This evening, what I'm going to be talking to you about is the demands for childcare, namely in the town of Smith Falls. So the role of the county service manager, I'm responsible for the planning and administrating and the operating of licensed childcare programs. I also coordinate and administer the delivery of childcare subsidy, and the key word here is license. So I'm responsible for childcares that are licensed, before and after school care that's licensed, home licensed care, and early on programs or play groups is what you might know them by. I'm also responsible for the local service providers in areas such as local governance, finance, operations, and service plan, and also ensuring that the provincial standards are in place for quality and the writing of the service plan. So just in 2019, in May of 2019, we completed our five-year service plan in Lanark County. And in doing so, we completed a number of surveys. We had a general survey that was both in French and English, and we completed 609 responses to that. We also had a survey that spoke to special needs, and we had 52 responses for that. We surveyed our unlicensed childcare and had 53 responders for that. And we also surveyed all our providers, which is our childcare providers, and asked them how we were doing as a service manager. So the goal of the five-year service plan is to solicit in-depth knowledge and information about community needs and to identify and address community gaps that we see and opportunities for growth. And again, there's no point having a service plan and not looking at it year after year to ensure that we're reaching the goals. So when we look at the province, direction for childcare, you'll see right at the top, accessible, and making sure that there's space availability, that we do in fact have spaces for the children in Smith Falls to attend childcare. That we also make it affordable and have reasonable rates, that we have flexibility, meeting the needs of parents and caregivers for non-standard schedules, because again, not everyone works from 9 to 5. That we have high quality care. It's not just enough to have childcare and to house children, but we want to make sure that our childcare is in fact has high quality. So that we follow the How Does Learning Happen pedagogy, and that we have high quality early childhood educators and quality assurance. So we actually have a staff member, including myself, that go into the child cares and make sure that there's quality care. And that's very different from licensing. The province has licensing people that go in and make sure that it's a safe environment. We are going in to make sure that your child care does indeed have quality to it. We also want to make sure that we're inclusive, access to French language service, Indigenous culture, special needs resourcing, so that children with special needs also have access to childcare. And we also want to make sure we're accessible to rural communities. We also need to be innovative, and as a result, all childcare staff are taking part in ongoing training. That happens throughout the year, as well as the service manager, my core staff are always taking training to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information. So the new approach to childcare talks a lot about affordability and the Ontario Childcare Access Relief from Expenses Care Tax Credit. So we're really encouraging parents to make sure that they complete their income tax so that they can apply for tax credits and everything that's available from the province. We also have to make sure that we're flexible and provide increased choice and availability for childcare. So one of the things that we did this past summer is we had a survey to find out how many childcare providers that are unlicensed are in our community and how we can go about approaching them so that they can become licensed, because again, we're looking for quality care and we also want to make sure that our children are safe. And again, improve the quality of care that's currently being delivered and the standards of care. So what's really important is the importance of the early years. Oftentimes people think that their children start learning when they attend school, but I think most people would appreciate that learning starts right from the beginning, and the early years are so important in a child's development, and we can't ignore that. So the early years set the groundwork for lifelong learning and behaviors. It also experiences early years shapes their capacity to learn, to interact with others, to deal with daily stresses and challenges that they may experience. It has an impact on their emotional well-being and overall health. So another thing that people may not realize is that oftentimes parents may get subsidies for children to attend childcare, but it's not always children who go into childcare because of their parent is working. Their parent may also be attending school. The parent may also have an addiction or a mental health issue, and it's felt by the doctor or Family and Children's Services that it's in the child's best interest to be involved in childcare while the parent gets assistance. So that's important that we recognize that. So we also want to talk about the impact of quality. So it's not enough just to have childcare programs, but you want to make sure that there's quality to them. So with quality care, studies have shown that advanced in verbal and intellectual skills, they're thriving emotionally, they're able to socialize better, and increases their success in school. Poor quality care, what we find is children exhibit more anxious behavioral issues, poor social skills, less trusting of adults, Underdeveloped language skills, there's a tendency to be less resilient. So in order to improve the standard or quality of care, we have ongoing professional development. We make sure that there's nutritious food in the child cares that we're offering, encourage community involvement, inclusiveness of children with special needs, and that we also explore our outdoor environments. So when it comes to why should we care about childcare? Why does it matter to us? Maybe we don't have children that are of that age. Well, it's really important that we start and continue to support families. The reality is that in today's society, there's less often family members with close ties in the vicinity of the family. So it takes a village to raise children, and we truly need to support our young families. We also find that it benefits the community, and the fact that if you do not invest in the early years, you will pay for it in the long run. So I spent most of my career as an Ontario Works manager, working with people who oftentimes had a lot of emotional issues, who basically didn't have a great early start. And so to me, this is an opportunity as a children's services manager to address things right from the get-go rather than trying to address things after the fact, and providing them with the most supportive environment that we can and supporting the parents. Also, from a purely social and economic perspective, families are telling us that they bought into that Lanark County, the town of Smith Falls is a great community to live in. They bought in that. They bought to that. They like the rural experience. But what they're saying is if there isn't childcare available to them, if there isn't the infrastructure in place to support them, then they can't move to a community that doesn't have that. And so some of our parents are experiencing that when they called the childcare to see if their child might be able to get in there, and they're finding out there's wait list. And that is having an impact. Some people have moved to the community only to find out after the fact that there's not childcare available, and they continue to move their child. They continue to transfer the child back and forth from a larger community, say Ottawa, Kingston, back and forth to the town. Now you say, that only works for a while. First of all, the connections that child is making is to another community. The child is not making friends with people in their community. They're not, the parents are making contacts and again, having those connections, not with people in the community that they live in, but another community. So it impacts that. The quality of life isn't that great when you're transporting your child back and forth, and if there's bad weather or just traffic, the children and the families are getting home later and later, which impacts their quality of life. From an economic perspective, the town of Smith Falls is growing more than we ever anticipated. We know that for a long time now, there's more jobs than there are people to fill them. And the fact of the matter is that employers are saying they want to make sure that they have employees that come in and feel supported by the community and that we have the supports available to them. And childcare is a huge one. If you look at Canopy Growth, a lot of the people that they're hiring are of childbearing age or have young children. And again, they need the support. They need to have childcare. I think anybody would feel that how do you go and go to work every day and feel comfortable in being able to contribute if you're relying on kind of piecemealing your childcare from day to day? And what we found is people who typically piecemeal their childcare, basically asking someone one day to look after their child, the next day asking somebody else, that it impacts their employment stability, that oftentimes it'll result in them not being able to maintain their job or having to leave their job because something has fallen through. So making our community attractive to families requires, again, that we have childcare, and not only childcare, but that the childcare has quality, and that it's safe, and that we are supervising and ensuring that the environment is appropriate. So, as mentioned, when we look at the challenges in a rural community, there are a number of challenges. Lack of transportation to attend childcare or for employees to attend work. Longer commute times, so those people that are commuting back and forth, it requires that the childcare be open for longer periods of time. So it's not okay to open your childcare at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You're opening it up at 6 o'clock. You're ending it sometimes at 6:30, 7 o'clock to accommodate those who are commuting. The spread of population that requires service, difficulty attracting childcare workforce. So that's one thing as the manager of children's services that I've really been focusing on, is how can we attract ECEs to our community. And we've implemented a plan that we're following through that's been quite successful. So one of the things that we're doing is we've made a great partnership with Algonquin College here in Lanark County in the town of Perth with ECEs. What we do is we, right from the get-go, we introduce ourselves. We're there at the first day that they start their programming. We also, when they're finishing up, before they graduate, we're into the schools, we meet with them, we bring our providers, so they have an opportunity to see all the childcares that are hiring. We do on-the-spot interviews and then follow-up interviews, and a number of the childcare or ECE registered ECEs have been hired right in our community. The other thing is I approach other colleges as well, explaining that we are in fact looking for ECEs. We also provide free training for ECE students so that they can get a sense of what we're doing here in the community, and they feel very supported by our community. We recognize ECEs as a profession, and that's something that we also attend various high schools to talk about getting into the ECE profession, and we're working with Employment Ontario for those who may be interested in doing it as a second career, and also providing information to people who may want to do online. So the impact of high demand for childcare, well, there's a number of impacts that come into effect. So currently right now, if you require anything less than full-time childcare, you're less apt to get a spot. Priority is given to full-time childcare. And we have a number of people that are maybe working 3 days a week, 2 days a week. That's not, priority is not given to that population. Less accommodating to split shifts, early mornings, evenings, overnight, weekends. So, harder to find childcare for special needs and behavioral issues. So I want to be clear with this. If you're in a licensed program, the expectation is that all children can take part in our programs. That's the expectation, and we follow that clearly, and it is a very welcoming environment. However, in an unlicensed environment, I have no control over that. And what we're hearing anecdotally is that oftentimes people who run their own home unlicensed childcare, they'll say, no, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking a special needs child because that's additional work for me. Or they can set a rate at whatever they want. So if the demand is high, their rates go higher and higher, and again, there's no control. If they're unlicensed, nobody's saying, no, I'm sorry, but that's too much to charge somebody for childcare. So the reality is those people who have the most money are the ones who are getting the spots, and those who don't have access. Those who have children with behavioral issues, special needs, they don't have access. They have to wait until a licensed spot is available. Again, demand increases the price and unlicensed providers, 72% of them. So what I did is I wanted to know a little bit about our unlicensed providers. They had no requirement to respond to me, but basically we spent the summer trying to, through Facebook and different areas, to try to find out what their thoughts were. 72% of them said they did not want to be licensed because they wanted to set their own rates. They wanted to have the ability to set their own rates. They also didn't want to have requirements to have someone come into their home and look it over and that type of thing. But 72% said they wanted to set their own rates, so that certainly has an impact. So if we look at some of the child development centers or some of the benefits of childcare. So some of the benefits of childcare in a school setting is you have one-stop shopping for parents, sharing of resources, that type of thing, early transition for children for childcare and childcare setting to schools. Okay, next one. So if we look at our child development centers in Smith Falls, we have the Child Development Center in Smith Falls. You have locations at St. Francis School, before and after school program, CHIMO, Duncan J. Schooler program. Okay. If we look at some of our Smith Falls local data, what you'll find is what I want to bring to your attention is this data, most of it came from 2016, 2014. It's very outdated. It doesn't take into consideration the amount of growth that has actually taken place in the town of Smith Falls. So at the time, 13% of the population of Lanark County resides in Smith Falls. Anticipated growth at that time was 11.85 by 2038, and 1,220 children, 0 to 12. So that's 13.6% of all children live within Smith Falls. So if we look at our licensed childcare in Smith Falls, we mentioned one of them, but we actually have 3 licensed center-based programs, 2 nonprofits, which is the Child Development Center and Riedel Childcare. Then we have 1 for-profit, which is the Nursery Rhyme Childcare. We have 11 licensed home childcare. So again, it's childcare that's within the home, but it follows the licensing. So their rates are monitored. They have inspectors that go into the homes and that type of thing. Now here we say we have 33 unlicensed home childcare providers. So what you have to keep in mind is 33 unlicensed home care providers, they could maybe have their grandchild, they could maybe have 1 child in an unlicensed child care environment, they could have 16 because again, nobody's monitoring how many children they have in the home. So it's really hard to guess as to how many how many children they're actually looking after. Also with unlicensed child care, we don't get notified if they decide to close, so that's an unpredictable piece there. 284 licensed child care spots available within a center and 198 licensed home care child spots for children in an amount of 1,220. So I think what that's indicating is we have a serious lack of childcare. And if we don't even look at the numbers, if I can say anecdotally, we have wait lists for all the childcare within the town of Smith Falls. So that being said, when I talked about our surveys that we completed, Children's Services Community Consultation, the results, 592 surveys were completed. The majority of the respondents who completed did commute back and forth. The preference for childcare, 77% of the parents said they wanted childcare within a licensed childcare center. That's where they wanted to have their childcare. Followed by in a home, followed by an unlicensed childcare. So I think the parents are in fact very much speaking up and saying they want their childcare in a childcare center. Why the preference for licensed childcare center? They felt it had quality, it had structure, it had accountability, and they were regulated. And they also felt that they had some peace of mind that if their provider was sick, that somebody else was there to do the child minding. When you have a home licensed childcare, what ends up happening if that provider is ill that day, you're again looking for childcare, so you don't necessarily have that. So why the preference for center-based? Again, qualified staff, no cancellation in center-based, feel children learn more, they feel like they play with more children their own age, that they're more ready for school, that they have a variety of meals and activities, and the fact that they will take their children with special needs, and not only take them, but provide an environment where everybody learns. So in summary, early years are critical. Lack of investment now will cost you in the long run in social services. Population and employment growth equals an increase in demand, and we are seeing definitely an increased demand in this community. From an economic and social perspective, we need to have the necessary infrastructure so that families are supported and that people aren't piecemealing their childcare together. Families want services where they reside. They do not want to go to another community in order to get childcare. The demand for children's services continues to grow in Smith Falls. It is not going away. Relying on licensed and unlicensed home childcare that we currently have now will not meet demand. We need to invest in our future in order to ensure that we have safe, quality, and reliable childcare within your community.
Thank you, Tammy. Who would like to start with questions? Councillor McKenna.
Thanks so much, Tammy. Very detailed. If I've got this correct, this is the start of the 5-year plan, right? We're just at the beginning of the revised 5-year plan.
Exactly.
So going forward.
Yes.
And can you be a little more specific about how many people are actually waiting? You manage the wait list for licensed. The lists aren't all over the place. They come through your organization, right?
No, so
They don't.
each childcare is responsible for their own wait list. So what I noted was that currently everybody tracks their wait list differently, which is a problem. And so what we, as part of our service plan, is we have created a program where each of the providers will have to input data that will speak to the wait list. Now, what I can offer you now is that we supported Art with a survey that happened within the town itself to figure out, to have a more, I guess, up-to-date information and not just anecdotal as to the wait list. Our providers themselves, so our childcare providers, are telling us that there is indeed wait lists. The problem is that some childcare providers, once the wait list got so long, just stopped tracking it. And I'm saying I need you to continue tracking to get real numbers. So that was one of the things, the first things that we did in this past year is we need to have reports that are accurate and reflective, and we can't just say there's wait lists. We need to see the actual, and take into consideration that the same name might be on a couple of lists, but even taking that in consideration, there is definitely a demand.
Thanks, and I'll just finish by saying, I think of all the things we're going to talk about tonight, the childcare and the future, and getting our children off on a great start is probably the most important.
Yes, I agree. And when I talked about social services again, there are some parents who struggle, and having a licensed childcare to support them in that, or taking part in early on play groups, has really helped in supporting them in raising their children and, having access to those services.
Thank you. Councillor Alford.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Thanks for that. How does Crow play? Do they just work with the licensed providers?
Yes. Okay, so there's actually three, there's actually not just Crow, but there's Crow and Reflect, and there's actually three organizations, Natural Connections, that are all responsible for licensed home care. Okay, Crow is the one that currently has access to subsidies and that has a contract with us. Just as of 2 weeks ago, we have a contract with Natural Connections for subsidies. And again, the reason for doing that is we recognize that if people don't have access to subsidies, then they really have no access to home license care for there's a certain population that cannot afford the rates that currently exist. So we have expanded that. The other thing that we found out from people is that they indicated that they could not afford, so there's a fee that Crow charges for the administration fees and all that type of thing. So what we did in Lanark County for this year is we've covered that fee, so that we're encouraging more and more unlicensed people to become licensed. And again, why do we want that? Well, we want to ensure that the care that's being provided is quality care and that they're in a safe environment. So the more people we can encourage to become licensed, the better it is for our community. So that's something we're really working on right now.
So in terms of, yes, if they're in licensed care, then people would be able to access subsidy both at the CDC and licensed home care.
Yeah, yes, with the
Right.
money that we provide them and with the subsidy care, they can access it in a center base, and they can also access it in a home care
Okay.
environment,
And
not
Are
unlicensed.
unlicensed, are there not risks for those unlicensed people?
Absolutely. There's very much a risk involved in.
Wouldn't it be better to be licensed?
It is, but some people would prefer not to have someone go in their home and tell them the changes that may need to be made in order for it to be a safe environment. Some people feel like it's somebody overseeing them and they don't want that. It's taking a huge risk to run an unlicensed childcare in your home, for sure. If you look at
And
all.
you're not eligible for subsidy?
In an unlicensed, no. No, you would not have, we're only offering subsidy for a licensed environment. That is one that, and that's the only ones that we can offer it to, because that's ones that we have contracts with, and that they need to follow requirements from the province. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Panka.
Thanks, Tammy. Some of my questions were answered, I guess, with your comments to Councillor Alford, but is there a certain number of licensed spots available within Smiths Falls?
So,
Or I guess subsidies, I guess would be the expression, I guess. Is there a certain amount of subsidies available within our community?
currently, one of the things that we've always prided ourselves is we currently do not have a wait list for subsidy. We do not have a wait list for subsidy, but you can't get subsidy without a spot.
And there's a means test for the subsidy?
There is a means test for subsidy, but, one of the things I said is you can't take pride that you never had a wait list if people don't know about it. So one of the things, a part of our service plan, is that we've really been doing a promotion of the fact that we do have subsidies that are available. So we have trained all our providers as part of their intake process to talk about subsidy. I'm very involved with a number of community agencies, and we've spoken to them to, again, places like Interval House or just agencies within our community to tell them about subsidy availability and the fact that it's not just for parents that work, but maybe they're attending school or the child maybe has a developmental issue where it's better for them to be in a childcare. So we've really been promoting that, but currently there's not a wait list for subsidy. But again, you can't apply for subsidy unless you have a spot, and if there's no spot, like, you're,
And the subsidies are for full day, maybe before and after school. Do they qualify for
Yes.
financial subsidies too?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's not to say everyone would get a full subsidy. Yeah.
Counselor Brennan.
Thanks, Tammy. I'm back in the Stone Age when my kids were in daycare. They went to both licensed and unlicensed places, and I prefer the licensed, although the unlicensed was their grandmother. So, you put out the number, whatever it is here, 33 unlicensed home care. That's probably, how do you come up with that? Is that a guesstimate, or, because
Okay.
I'm sure there's situations where you don't know about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's lots of situations that we
Yeah.
don't know about. We're probably not going to know about grandma who's looking after a child who typically doesn't go
Yeah.
on Facebook to ask questions with their peers.
Yeah.
So I'm not indicating that that's the solid number.
Yeah.
But we are one of the few municipalities that made an attempt to find out what the unlicensed childcare, I mean, at the end of the day, they have they're their own person, right? They
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to respond to a survey.
Yeah.
Although I will say that the unlicensed population in Lanark County and the town of Smith Falls, frankly, were very open for the most part and very willing to answer questions. And so that was great because it gave us the opportunity to say, hey, why is it that you haven't become licensed? Were you aware that you don't have to pay these fees? Are you aware that we can support you in a toy lending? So just kind of engaging those conversations. So that's why. But you're right, the 33, it may be a lot more.
I
And again,
suspect it is. Just educate me, how cumbersome is it if, to become licensed, although you'd have to meet certain standards and have inspections and that sort of thing? Is there?
I personally don't think it's cumbersome, but for some people, they would find that an invasion of their privacy.
Yeah.
Right? But in terms of cumbersome, I think it's less cumbersome in a way because we provide support. So some people are very good at looking after children. They're not necessarily very good at the administrative piece, so we can provide those agencies such as Crow and Andrew Fleck and Natural Connections, they can provide supports that way. Some people don't have a lot of money to buy additional toys, or, okay, well then some of the programs will provide that, or they'll give you supports in the latest training. So one of the things we do is if you're licensed, we provide free training for you. So this month we're focusing on behavioral issues. So you can come for training on behavioral issues at no cost to yourself. So again, that's why we're really trying to promote, here's how we can serve you. Because there's a lot of, rumors out there as, oh my goodness, it's so much work, but it really isn't. To become licensed, there's certain criteria in your house to make sure that's a safe environment. But in terms of paperwork yeah.
That's interesting. I found it striking that you mentioned that you don't say no to a subsidy. It's just the spaces that are the issue. So
Yeah, so far we haven't
more-
had to. Then that's not to, I can't
we
stand
might be
up here.
talking about that later.
Yeah, I can't stand here and say that may
Yeah.
never be the case. We have said no to subsidy if they don't meet the requirements. But what I'm saying is there's not a wait list for subsidy at this point.
Yeah.
We put a lot of investment into our
Thanks
subsidies.
for coming. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Counselor Allen?
Yes, thanks so much for coming this evening. Also, thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
I know that many times, I know at Child Development Center, when I worked at Elgin School, it was Elgin then, those families were able to become educated with the subsidy that was provided, and it changed the family's world. So it's a really good program. I'm interested in the attachment that you sent. Are you going to speak to that?
Sorry, which one?
It's got numbers. Pardon me?
Yeah,
That's later
that's the attachment
Yeah.
for the staff report that's going to follow in priority items.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
will be here, but Art will be presenting that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Tammy, I'm going to save most of my commentary for a discussion under priority items, but I did wonder whether or not, because you conducted the survey this year, correct?
We did, in preparation for our service plan. We were the first in the province to
Okay.
submit our service plan, and, yeah,
Okay.
we find it very helpful.
My only question is whether or not you noticed an impact on the needs for childcare as a result of the extension of maternity leave from 12 months to 18 months.
Certainly, that has played a piece, for sure. That's been a component. Also, the change in school time has been a component. Like, there's a number of things. Like, for instance, some parents who never required childcare before the changes in school time now require it. So there's many factors that impact that, for sure. Yeah, so that does have that can have an impact. But the demand is very much there.
Okay, but sorry, do you see a lessened demand in the need for infant care now that, no?
No.
Has it increased?
Yes,
Okay, well, that's pretty definitive. Thank you.
yes.
Okay, well, you're going to stick around for the
I
priority
am.
item? Okay,
Yes.
fantastic.
Okay.
Well, hearing that, then we'll move off delegations, excuse me, if I can get back to my agenda. Okay, thanks. Okay, we have no adoption of the minutes tonight. Do we have CAOs and directors' reports? Quick ones?
Madam Chair, we have two brief ones, Director Dunlop, and then I'll have a very short one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just wanted to do a quick update on the existing water tower. We want to report this evening that the water tower will be taken out of service for routine maintenance beginning Wednesday morning. It will essentially be emptied or partially emptied for visual inspection and some cleaning. There's also a disinfection procedure that follows, and we will have the tank back in service tentatively for Monday, September the 30th. So when the tank is taken out of service, essentially there can be some fluctuations and pressures in the system because all the water supply is coming from the plant during that period. So just wanted to share that this evening, and we'll have information pushed out on the web and Facebook as well tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? None? CAO Morris. Or sorry, Director Dunlop, do you have another one?
No, that's it.
Okay. CAO Morris.
Thank you. Really quickly, one of the reports that we submit and other municipalities submit to the province each year is called the Financial Information Return, known as the FIR. It's a boatload of financial data that we send to the province every year. And the province recognizes the first 16 that submit the data in a comprehensive and accurate way. And we were one of those for 2018. So thank you to Treasurer Kozio. We got a nice letter from the Honourable Steve Clark today, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, telling us that we were in the top 16 out of 444 municipalities. So a big thanks to Janet.
I was going to say, I don't know that we, in the royal sense, can be used in this case, because I believe that most of that honor falls solely to Janet. And our auditor. Yes, don't forget the auditor, but thank you, Janet. Okay, moving on, we have no correspondence items. However, we are going to move into in-camera in the adjacent room. Are you moving, Lorraine? Moved by Lorraine, seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Thank you. We'll be right back.
I hope we're right.
Sports Eye. Okay. What do you snack? That kicked back my heartburn when I was pregnant. It was almonds. Seriously. Raw. Mike had me eating super healthy, so it was like raw, untreated almonds. Yeah, not when they're like the only thing you can snack on. It gets to you after a while. Something very specific. Yeah. Is Peter in the washroom? All right, go ahead, Sean. Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for your patience while we were in camera. While we were away, we received an update on a matter pertaining to a litigation and provided direction to staff respecting a land disposition. With that, we will move on to priority items. But before we do so, I'm actually going to suggest an amendment to our agenda. With council's permission, I would like to suggest that we move the child care expansion feasibility report from I to C. So we'll do economic development and tourism strategy, followed by the cannabis tourism strategy report, and then we'll do child care and move on to the agenda from there. I see somewhat nodding heads. Yes, nodding heads. Okay, thank you. So to start our priority items, we'll start with the economic development and tourism strategy, and Jennifer will provide us with a report. Hi, Jennifer.
Thank you. So, in conjunction with the town's strategic plan, every 4 years, the Economic Development and Tourism Department develops a work plan in order to reflect the priorities set out by Council. So the Economic Development and Tourism Strategy for 2019 to 2022 is in front of you tonight. There are 5 areas of focus for the department over the next few years. They include business retention and expansion to focus on assisting existing businesses and helping them to grow. Investment attraction to increase our readiness in welcoming new businesses to Smiths Falls. Tourism, one of Council's 6 priorities. Our efforts in tourism will focus on 4 target markets: retirement-aged day trippers, cannabis tourists, cycle tourists, and boaters. The 4th area of focus will be marketing and communications in order to implement the marketing and communications strategy that Council approved earlier this year. And finally, partnership development with potential funders and supporters, including the Ontario Highlands Tourism Association and Ontario East Economic Development. So while this is an ambitious work plan for a small staff team, it's clear that economic development is a team sport. So working with our partners, including the Chamber of Commerce and the DBA, as well as Council and the broader community and staff team, we feel we can build on the current robust and growing economy with great returns to the town and its residents. So it's staff recommendation then that Council endorse the Economic Development and Tourism Strategy for 2019 to 2022.
Thank you, Jennifer. Councillor Alfred, your hand was up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I gone through it over it several times, including the work plan, and I am a firm believer that the efforts that are currently underway in town are absolutely necessary to insulate Smiths Falls from future economic downturns, be they in 5 years, 15 years, or 50. Hershey had something like 500,000 visitors a year, but we weren't successful as a town in capturing those visitors to stop and visit and dine here. In short, their only destination was the Hershey plant. And, of course, the broken chocolate bars. And then they went home. We have a very strategic, or solid strategic plan for this town. It's reflected extremely well in your report. And I definitely support the staff's recommendation, and I may say that it is one of the most complete reports and action plan, and ties the strategic plan very well. And I was quite impressed with that whole evolution from this report and as it carried through in the attachment that you sent out. It was very good, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire.
Thank you. Great document, well put together. Out of the 4 or 5 main tiers of it, I'm wondering about physician recruitment. I think that from the case studies out there, the communities that make physician recruitment a full-time, ongoing effort have the best success at retaining and recruiting. And I don't know that putting it under business retention and expansion is prudent for us as a council when it is a pressing need for the community. I think that the nature of a potential physician looking for a community, it's a different selling point than an entrepreneur or a small business coming to town. Especially, say, somebody maybe that's going to the CHC model, that's more of a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 kind of style, that the same kind of focus of a business expansion and retention and recruitment wouldn't apply as well. So I was wondering, I don't know if it's too late along in the process, but if the partnership section could be divvied up to the points that are more relevant for each one, like say Valley Heartland, business retention, or tourism for Lanark County. And then we could make some space for physician recruitment to become a tier of our economic development and tourism vision.
Okay, I didn't hear a question in that, Chris.
Sorry. Is there any other, I guess I'd bounce that off the rest of council to see what the thoughts are.
Okay, anybody have comments on Chris's point? Jay and then Lorraine. Sorry, Lorraine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of my comments were just going to say, I mean, we're going to hear about cannabis tourism in a little while, which is very exciting. But the fact of the matter is, physician recruitment is in here. It's part of the plan. It's part of the action plan, and I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and we spend time on that. We get updates every meeting on it, and, you know, attracting tourists is what we want. We want business to come here, but we also want to improve the quality of life for the people that live here, help the businesses that are already here in terms of retention of employees. We heard that last meeting, that is a huge problem. People can't find people to stay working for them. And I mean, there's a lot of movement and that sort of thing, and people want doctors. So I applaud you for putting that type of thing in here. It's got to be a priority, of course. And whether it's under business retention or wherever, it's in there, and it's an action item, and we're gonna address it. And the other one that I like too is the CIP. I mean, that's got to be in there too, because we're seeing the benefits of that. And we have another one tonight. So yeah, it's a great plan. A lot of work went into it, I know, and I congratulate you. I look forward to checking these boxes off.
Thank you.
So thanks, Jen.
Lorraine.
Yeah, I don't disagree with my colleague, Councillor McGuire. I think it's really important, but I would like to just say I'm seeing that I know your economic development and tourism team are really recruiting doctors, and I know just from hearing where you've been and how you're trying to promote our town. And I do that when I go to the hospital. I mean, the residents that are waiting on me when I'm there get like a full salesman pitch because I'm begging them to stay. So I think it's a community initiative. I think recruiting doctors isn't just you doing this. I think it's us, all of us needing to be, cognizant of these young residents are going to be looking at a community where they want to, stay, work, and play. I mean, that's the whole thing. And I do like what you've been doing, so I'm okay with it sitting in business retention and expansion. I just want to say keep up those kind of outings and the focus that you have for that, because it is a really important, critical piece of our town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Panko and then Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, Jennifer, you and your team and anyone else who contributed has really put together a very comprehensive report. I mean, really for you, this is a roadmap going forward. The action plan lays it out very well. Labor force development, critical right now. I mean, that's something we would not have said a couple of years ago. I talk to employers around town now, they have a hard time filling empty positions. So it all ties together. I mean, comments regarding physician recruitment, well, we want to make sure we have physicians here. It's people wanting to move to our community, they want a doctor. So it's critically important. Whether it's part of BRNE or it's a standalone, for me, as long as it's part of the plan, it's going to get the attention it's going to require. I guess it's a matter of resources going forward, and I guess if we go to the measure, the status and the budget and who's leading this stuff, it's pretty wholesome. There's a lot of stuff going on here over a fairly short period of time. For the most part, this is something we're doing within this term of council. Do you feel, are there gaps, I guess, in resources when it comes to executing this? Because it's not just executing each individual outlet, it's the ongoing follow-up, and you're managing, I don't know how many, 15 different items at the same time on top of other responsibilities.
Yeah, it's a good point, thank you. We are, it's certainly an ambitious plan, and we are concerned because the Local Immigration Partnership Project is done at the end of March, and Donna and Kara have been a fantastic backup support to our department, and we will miss them very much for all their various skill sets, and we have Lauren Sinclair on contract. So I think we do need to address our staffing situation, whether that be contracting projects out, but we will look at that moving forward.
I don't think we recognize from an economic development tourism standpoint, this is really revenue generation. There's a net cost to the municipality for all the items, or many of the items that are going to happen here, even staff resourced. But it's the overall benefit to the community and diversifying our local economy, as Councillor Alford mentioned, and making sure we're strong and sustainable going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
So I like the plan and appreciate the effort that's gone into it. Regarding Councillor McGuire's question, perhaps I'm assuming that, if I recall correctly, the visitor recruitment does maybe a 1 year or at a point they'll say, here's where we're at, a lay of the land. And I'd like to hear from them if they think that, and I'm assuming the same thing with our tourism strategy, is that, in a few months, this is where we're going to hear an update on where we're at. And I think at that time, we could look to say, if the physician recruitment group can build a case at why it would be its own pillar within our strategy, I'd be open to that. As we go to refresh, either annually or in 6 months, but I'm okay with it right now. I like the idea of it raising the profile and keeping it on the front burner. I do know that we let our foot off the pedal over the last few years as we were gathering some positions, and now we're in a different position, and I don't think you can ever let up. It's not going to go away. We'll never reach the sweet spot and have everything we need and can just stop. We're always going to be recruiting physicians and nurse practitioners. So I'd be interested in following up, asking what your group think about it, and at the end of the year or whenever they do their wrap up, and then linking and saying, does it require to raise the profile?
Thank you. Jennifer, I think I just have one question, and it's about the BR&E program, because I understand that Valley Heartland has a very well-established BR&E program that they have rolled out across the county. In your sense, why do this ourselves internally rather than piggybacking on the momentum that has been built across the county on regional tourism levels?
So that's a great question, and we did in fact participate in their survey. So their survey had a prescribed start and finish time, and it has wrapped up. And once the final reports are ready, I will bring it here on the report. But business retention and expansion is an ongoing process, and so they will not be continuing that work ongoing. So it's important for us to make sure we are aware of the pulse of our business community, the issues that are arising. So those meetings on a regular basis with our business community are critical for us to continue to do, even when that project has passed.
Okay, thank you. I think what I've noticed most, particularly in traveling as a tourist, I find that the most successful communities seem to be the ones that are tackling tourism development and capacity building at a regional level. You look at something like Prince Edward County, where it's not done in isolation of the lower tier municipalities. You get a critical mass to build momentum, and not just on the tourism level, even within the own commerce community. And I think that's why you see chambers of commerce like our own that take a more regional look rather than insulating themselves to the interior of Smiths Falls. So I think, to me, I mean, I'm happy with the report, but I would like to think that on a go-forward going-forward basis, that we would look more collaboratively outside the town boundaries.
absolutely.
And I notice, I mean, you do have some references in here to Leeds Grenville, particularly when it comes to the Rideau Heritage Route, and a little bit with Cindy James and the Small Business Enterprise Center, but I don't see a lot of connectivity with the county itself. Did you give that some thought? Do you have some comments on that?
Well, I think the BRNE project was a great first start on that front, and certainly we work very closely with Marie White for Lanark County Tourism, and we buy into a lot of the work that they're doing and work together on that. So I think we can continue to build on that as time goes on.
Okay, thank you. So this will come forward not tonight, at the next council meeting? Okay, thank you. Jennifer, you're still here. You're going to move on to cannabis.
I am.
Please and thank you.
Thank you. So in the new 2019 to 2022 strategic plan, Council chose to make tourism one of its top 6 priorities. Within that priority, one of the initiatives was to develop a cannabis tourism strategy, and we're pleased to present that to you this evening. So in November of 2018, a small group of local people started to meet to discuss cannabis tourism. Legalization had just come into effect, and there was energy around the possibilities that this new industry could offer. The strategic partners are listed within the strategy, and I would just like to recognize their efforts, as many of them are in the audience tonight. So we've got Jeff Murphy from 4 Degrees, who there he is, who was the chair of the working group, Jamie Puttycombe from St. Lawrence College, Kelly McNeil and Jordan Hahn and Maggie McDougall from Canopy Growth, and Leslie Richardson from the Chamber of Commerce, Nate Morris and Jen Prevost from Canada's Cannabis Project, Joe Dow from Dow Testing Services, Lisa McLean and Heather Curry-Whiting from LeBoat, and of course our own Becky Allen and Lauren Sinclair, who were also contributors. And there were other folks that came and went, local businesses that came to the table and made their contribution. So being home to the world's largest cannabis company has brought us a unique opportunity to brand Smiths Falls as a top cannabis tourism destination. The question the group struggled with was how. There were no Canadian success stories to imitate, and the models presented in other parts of the world didn't provide the inspiration we were looking for locally. The small working group, many of whom you've just met, chose to model the plan after the highly successful wine tourism industry, including Niagara and Prince Edward County, and a strategy started to form. So in the strategy before you today, there's four strategic priorities. One, maintain the fluidity of the strategy to meeting the ever-changing landscape of cannabis tourism. Assist with the development of business opportunities to incubate cannabis-centered tourism. Draw insight from successful wine and cannabis tourism destinations for marketing initiatives. Control the marketing message to better establish Smiths Falls as the cannabis capital. Smiths Falls faces the same challenges that all wine tourism destinations face when they were just getting started. It's difficult to attract tourists without first having a wide selection of businesses to cater to their needs. We also need a shift in regulations and marketing rules to make all of this happen. The cannabis tourism strategy outlines potential solutions for these challenges, which will act as a work plan for us as we move forward. Some key action items were highlighted by the group and include the development of a cannabis business accelerator, investigating the potential to use hempcrete in storage buildings in our beautiful parks, participation in a smart city challenge, and the development of a cannabis retail and consumption business or businesses, as among others. So, Mayor Pankow and members of council, we believe Smiths Falls is the first community in Canada to develop a cannabis tourism strategy. On behalf of our staff and our strategic partners, I would ask you to endorse the cannabis tourism strategy as presented.
Perfect. Thanks, Jennifer. Can I just ask one technical question before we go to open floor questions? What is hempcrete buildings?
Yes. So, hempcrete. Hemp is the male cannabis plant. Where is Nate? He'll nod or correct me as I go. It is the male cannabis plant and is actually quite durable, and so they're developing ways to use it as a building material.
Like instead of a cinder block?
Instead of insulation. There's pictures here that Mr. Manhire has.
Okay.
Yeah.
While Art shows those, maybe we'll open the floor to questions. Yep. Got it. Thank you. Oh, interesting. Okay. Wendy's going to start us.
this is new territory.
It is.
Not just for Smiths Falls, for Canada. And it is really something we need to get out in front of.
It's made of that. This,
We have an edge because of Canopy now. And I've had the opportunity on 2 occasions at the request of the mayor to meet with groups, one from the UK, one was from the UK, and one was from the US. They were US Canopy people and the people that support that. And the thing they wanted to know, what all the questions were about, was how did this happen here, so that they could find some magic bullet, some roadmap to take our experience and translate it elsewhere. They see this, certainly in the US, as a solution for what we were looking at 5 years ago, the future we were looking at 5 years ago. So I think we have an edge right now in that we are the home of Canopy. We are the cannabis capital of Canada, so labeled, I think, by the press, but we're still Smiths Falls. I think we would be doing a disservice to our town and its future not to undertake this strategy. And as you say, it's got to be fluid, because we still don't even have we don't have a retail center yet. We should have one of those. So I agree that this has to be fluid, but I agree that this is an opportunity that's landing in our, I won't even say landing in our laps. It took a lot of people and a lot of work and a lot of, on many levels. I am absolutely excited to go forward and be, as Smiths Falls has so often been, charting its own course, not asking, blazing its own trail, and yeah, let's go.
Mayor Panko.
Back-to-back outstanding reports and plans. Jennifer, thanks to you again, you and your team, and everyone who contributed to this. And I know it was a number of meetings over a number of months, and when you look at wine tourism, it's something that's been around decades, I guess, in Canada. Not for 50 years or 100 years, but it's a fairly new thing. It started small and quickly evolved, and we see economies in Ontario, let's say in as mentioned, Niagara and Prince Edward County and down in Essex County, which have really been driven now by wineries and wine tourism. And that might have been something that people would never have considered 50 years ago. So considering the possibilities of cannabis tourism is something which, I mean, as much as it may have not been even a remote thought even 5 or 6 years ago, I think we stand out globally as a community which has benefited most by the change in legislation and change in attitudes. And I think that experience we've had here has helped us embrace this in a much more wholesome and much more accelerated manner probably than anywhere else in the country. So it makes sense, of course, that this would be here. And the key element we have here, which does not exist anywhere else, is a visitor center at the Canopy facility that is a world-class tourism destination. And I happened to be in there Friday at a meeting with a journalist from Japan who was here doing a story on Canopy and on Smiths Falls. I was there for an hour, and there's dozens upon dozens, probably hundreds of people which walked by me in the visitor center. And there was one person, there was a couple of people, there was a group of 15. I mean, it was just a constant flow of people. And that's an attraction which enables people to come in and learn about cannabis in a way they can't really ever do it anywhere else. And so taking advantage of what we have there, the missing piece, of course, today is just having that retail store. The previous council, this council, have advocated for that. My understanding through the last provincial budget is LPs will be permitted to have one, which means Canopy will be able to open one here, and hopefully it's in the not-so-distant future. And then it's all the ancillary businesses, which we've learned a little bit about so far, that we know it will be coming down. It's just a matter of when and how that rolls out. This council indicated we would be open to being a pilot community for cannabis usage in certain ways. So we've already made major steps. This really ties it all together in a very complete and strategic fashion. So no, I embraced it completely. once again, has caught the attention of media across the province. We've had calls this afternoon and CBC, and they're coming, or a conversation again tomorrow. So again, it's while we can't go out there and necessarily advertise and promote ourselves as a community which is embracing cannabis tourism, indirectly developing a strategy really enables the media to do that for us. Some great analysis here, and I think we just need to look forward to changing regulations which will enable us to move this one step forward at a time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Jay?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I mean, when Bruce first walked in here, I thought he was going to talk about garbage, but it was about marijuana, but cannabis. But this is a great plan, and we had a preview at the ECDAV committee. And the action plan is thinking outside the box. One question I have for you is the analytical lab on Victoria Avenue. What's that?
Well, there'll be an announcement to come.
Okay.
But one of the things that's really important in the cannabis industry is that they have third-party testing. And so we're hoping that third-party testing can be accessed close to home.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Great. And the other part in here, of course, the 420 party and that sort of thing. But you talk in the plan about the wine country.
Mm-hmm.
And one part of here I like is the micro grow. As part of the tourism package, I think it's going to be a great addition. So
Yep.
I just can't say anything else other than what the mayor said. And Wendy, it's just everyone's behind it, and I think it's a great thing for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lorraine?
Yeah, I don't know, we can't just keep saying the same thing, but this strategy is, I mean, I've spent a lot of my former career doing strategic planning, and this strategic plan is exemplary. It's easy to read, it's laid out, it's colorful, it's just very simple, and anyone reading it can think, wow, we're really on the right path of what we're going to do. The fact that you're comparing it to wine tasting is close to my heart too. And I just think it's, let's get going. This is an exciting future. Yeah, thank you.
Peter?
Thank you very much. There was a quick question. You mentioned FAM tour, F-A-M tour. Can you
I'm
just-
sorry for that. It's familiarization. In the tourism industry, they shorten it to FAM.
Okay, thanks. And then, so I read it the first time and I really loved it. And so I read it the second time with a risk, looking at risks as part of our role here at council is just to
Yes.
manage those. And so one of the things I was thinking about is unintended consequences as we roll this out. And I would encourage assuming that the vehicle to implement a lot of this, it is the town's cannabis tourism strategy, but we need our partners to help us implement it. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So as we do that, I would encourage that group and yourself to consider unintended consequences. One of the things we don't want anything to happen in any way as we roll this out to encourage youth to take up cannabis.
Yes.
And we also don't want to, in some unintended way, to help the illicit market benefit from our good work. So always keeping our guard up. One of the things I think why Canopy has succeeded is and from an outsider looking at them, I don't think they ever cut corners. And we read in the news about some industry, in the cannabis industry, who've looked like they've cut corners and they've lost their license. And what I think when I see Canopy is that they've been a world-class, not just, but they conduct themselves in a way that's first class and always above board. And I would encourage our strategy that we're always thinking about the youth and thinking about any unintended consequences, that we've been keeping our eye on that. So
Thank you.
congratulations. I look forward, and I'll keep my risk hat on and
Thank you.
encourage us
Appreciate
all to do that.
That's great.
Thank you, Peter. Jennifer, I just have a couple statements and then some questions. I think what surprised me most about the document was how classy and sophisticated it was, and it felt akin to doing a wine tour or promoting wine tourism, and that was really refreshing. And I hope that that's the momentum that spreads, like kind of to echo Peter's comments, but spreads into our community partners so that they understand that there's a need to elevate their game when they come to the table. I guess the only thing that I have reservations about, and I don't want to fearmonger about cannabis and the effects of cannabis, but certainly what has come out the last several weeks are health concerns about vapor is a big one. And I see that vapor establishments and vapor-friendly tourism is highly identified in the report. So I do have reservations about that. But then I also think that it might be a slick opportunity to move into an extended partnership with medical professionals. And perhaps that could, dovetail with our efforts to recruit physicians to the community, people who are interested in researching the effects of cannabis, and also maybe picking up some general
Great
care
idea.
patients in there might be a really fantastic opportunity to showcase not only the tourism side, but also the general health benefits and positivity of cannabis in the future. Besides that, I think it was a great report. I particularly love the idea of turning the peninsula behind my house into a consumption area. I think it's great. I think, the limitations to actually access that area are going to be challenging, but I think it's a fantastic place for people to go and relax and actually use that space, which right now does not get used at all. So I look forward to seeing some life and activity on that part of the island. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none. So you need a resolution to endorse the plan, but that will come forward at the next council meeting, not
you.
this evening.
Correct.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on. We are going to flip item I up the agenda. So Art is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we grow from one growth area to another growth area. What this report is all about is taking a look at childcare services. And just to go back in a little bit of time, a year ago we were opening up a new childcare center at St. Francis de Sales School with the new location, and we had moved the childcare spaces from Thurber Street down there for the preschool, and then we also had the capacity for before and after care extended at St. Francis de Sales. What we're seeing in our experience there is that this year we have 2 extra groups of children that are participating in before and after care and kindergarten care. So there's a total of 28 new spaces that have been filled by people needing care in the community. We have the additional spaces at Thurber Street, and we met with the county to take a look at what their demands were, and you heard Tammy's report earlier today around the benefits of childcare as well as the economic realities of childcare. And one of our issues has always been just balancing the need for childcare against the cost of providing that service. We still remain as, if not the lowest, one of the lowest cost childcare providers in the county, and I think that's helped us in the overall strategy in terms of getting people in. So what we do have is we have the capacity, and when we moved the childcare from Thurber Street location to St. Francis, we kept the license at Thurber Street. There is an extensive process for licensing a childcare that the province actually goes through, and the county's involved, and we have maintained that license. We renewed the license this year in August, and we have a list of some things that we need to do to the building. One of the benefits right now of taking a look at expanding childcare space available in the community is not only to meet the pressures from a growing economy, but also we have kind of an opportunity here to take advantage of some capital funding provided from the province through the county to help us with those renovations in the facility. So we don't have all the ducks lined up at this point, and part of the challenge, there are 2 major challenges, and one is what the province does around childcare funding. We cannot quantify that at this point. The county still hasn't quantified what that means. So we know there will be an impact. We just don't know what that impact is going to be. That impact, just as a note, is going to affect us one way or another, whether we open up the spaces at Thurber Street or not. It will just mean a difference when we do open that up. So the second piece is actually a staffing piece. So the school boards have started hiring ECEs to help in their programs at the schools. And what that's done is it's created a bit of a challenge in terms of recruitment for EC positions. We have done a fair bit of work with the schools around here, and one of our benefits is that we run a high quality, very professional service, and that is attractive not only to parents and looking for care for their children, but it's also attractive to people who want to work in the field and learn the way the field actually works. So Judy has gone to a number of the open houses and workshops and been able to do some recruiting. We do have some part-time staff that could extend, but there's always the challenge in terms of the cost and availability of ECE qualified staff. So we have a couple of things that we would like to look at this point, and in order to actually kind of take advantage of the funding from the county, as well as meet the demand out in the community, we have a couple of challenges, and one is that we have to get the spaces open for within this calendar year. We did do an online survey with, sorry. Can't remember the name of the service, Jen.
Speak Up Smiths Falls.
Speak Up Smiths Falls, thank you. Just escaped my mind. And received 32 responses to the survey, as well as a number of people, 326 who read the survey, 133 that were part of it, and then 32 that actually engaged in the full survey. So out of those 32, there was 31 respondents that were were in favor of opening up Thurber Street, and were looking for care. The care that is provided, or that we can provide at Thurber Street, is, just to be clear, is toddler care and preschool care. So that's ages 18 months and up to school age care. There is a bit of demand for that infant care. Infant care, we're not licensed at Thurber Street for infant care, so we would have to do some physical renovations to the building. The other challenge with infant care is the cost. There's a 3-to-1 maximum ratio for staff to participants, and the cost starts to become very expensive for people. Not to say that we couldn't look at that in the future, but at this point, the idea of opening that service up, we would require a lot more work and preparation. So, all in all, we have the capacity for 54 spaces, 10 toddler, 24 preschool, and 20 kindergarten at Thurber Street. We have a list of renovations that we'd like to do to the building. We have a ceiling of up to $100,000 that the county will provide if we can get the spaces open for or within this calendar year. It's not to say that we have to do that this year. We can always do that another time. It's just the stars kind of lined up, and we are facing that anecdotal, at least, feedback that people are looking for care and not being able to find it.
Okay, thank you. Wendy, you're first.
First of all, compliments that Thurber Street didn't get mothballed when we moved over to St. Francis, and that we maintained the licensing. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be able to have this discussion right now if you had not had in addition to what you've told us and after Tammy's presentation, for me, this is sort of a no-brainer. We have the opportunity to have the county put additional monies, not that they haven't contributed to Thurber in the past, they have. But we have the ability to get money from the county for the changes that we need at Thurber Street. So I think we'd be foolish to turn that down, and I also do believe, whether it be anecdotal or not, that we are needing more childcare spaces. Now, I from your survey, it looks like infants would be the top priority, but they're the top ask, but the other age groups are available, wanting care too. And I know how expensive, or I have some knowledge of how expensive it is to have infant spaces, and if we're not licensed there, it's not, we can't consider that right now anyway. So I know it's a short timeline, and I know it would be pushing it to get it all done, but I also have great faith in the abilities of our town staff, so I am supportive of moving forward with reopening Thurber.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. It's a great project needed. What's the 2019 budget hit going to look like? Like in a range of worst case, best case?
The operating costs, it'll be based on registration and what we can garner. The reason why we're actually bringing the report forward at this point is to give us enough time to do that lead-in, to recruit staff, to do the registration, and to identify and complete the capital tasks. So from a capital perspective, it's nothing because the county will cover that. From an operational perspective, it would be very little because we'd be operating, I'm anticipating that we'd be open in December.
Excellent. Thank you.
Jay?
Thank you. Thanks, Art. My kids went to Thurber Street, and Mark Hart was the teacher. But, I'm glad. We had an opportunity when they built the new school to get some new spaces, and we had the foresight to keep this one ready to go. And I know Judy's done a great job, and I'll just echo Wendy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. In anecdotal, we've heard earlier from a delegation, but anecdotally, I'm walking around town and I'm seeing these people, like, who are these people with the carriages, and where are the kids going? And there's a lot of millennials here, and with young families, and I think this is something we got to do, and it's a great opportunity. The county's going to pay the bill for the fix-up, and off we go. So thanks for that, Art.
Thanks, Jay. Lorraine?
Yeah, thanks, Art. I have a few questions in regards to the survey. The 31 people who said they would be interested in Thurber Street, are any of those at St. Francis right now?
We don't have identifiers for that, Madam Chair. So what we're looking at, or what we were looking at, is expansion of the service. So we're anticipating.
Did we keep the educational equipment and supplies and furniture that was at Thurber when we shut it down?
Yes, Madam Chair, we actually did keep the equipment. The biggest pieces that we're looking at is relates to accessibility for the building, as well as some of the HVAC components. So we were holding together an air conditioner with kind of spit and baling wire at the end. So we're looking at changing that out. The play structure, some of those types of things. The actual play equipment and the spaces we will modify as well through this, paint it up and get it ready for a new opening.
No, I agree with my colleagues. I think having that $100,000 to help us. And, when Thurber Street, I was council rep on the daycare program for the last couple terms, and they've done really good work in that building. And as much as it's an older building, the children didn't notice. It was well kept, it was clean. The yard they loved. They loved the fact that they can go to the fence and talk to siblings. And yeah, I was really glad we kept it. And now look at this, we're going to fill it again. So children are important to our community, probably the most important residents, because hopefully they'll grow up and move back here and become the former, the continuation, the new adults. So yeah, I think we need to put this in place as much as we can, especially if we have that $100,000. Let's try to figure out how we can make that happen.
Thank you. Sean?
So we've got a relatively short time frame here to make this happen. I guess the first question, the $100,000 that's available from the county for these improvements, is that part of the regular county capital budget towards childcare? Or, I mean, what are the possibilities, if the county's budget was retained for next year, pretty close to what it is for this year, would there be money next year for capital improvements too? I don't know, maybe that's a question to Tammy.
Unfortunately, I don't have the 2020 budget. It's coming to us sometime soon. I mean, what I would say is that any way that we could support a community project, we would. It's clearly stated in our service plan that there is demand and need in the town of Smith Falls. So this, we're going to follow our service plan to the best way that we can in terms of where we direct our money. But unfortunately, I don't have that information for you.
And I know we were fortunate to get money to help set us up in St. Francis as well from the county, so it made a big difference. I guess my not really a need for caution, but just a bit of a pause from the standpoint is it's the operating expenses that we have to understand we will be assuming if we go down this road. And if we go back to 2014, I think roughly our actual cost run the CDC at that time was in excess of $300,000. And I know a service review came through, some management, some changes in how the place was managed, and that deficiency dropped to about 246 in 2015, 157 in 16, and continued to drop from there. But we know that there's probably still going to be some degree of operating expense, and if we open up and we get 31 kids, it would not be staffed to capacity. We would staff based on what the needs are. But I guess it's just a matter of, is this something, it's not one of our core responsibilities. It's something that it's something we can choose to operate or we can choose not to. And I guess in this instance, if there's a need in the community, if we didn't fill it, there's a void, the private sector or a not-for-profit could step in and fill that void. We know the quality of care is exceptional with what we have right now, and I have to assume in many of those places it's very similar to the same. But I guess the key thing would be, I mean, the money's great to get it done this year. I know there's a need in the community. My concern would just be the ongoing operating expenses, understanding it's probably going to be, if we go back to 2017, it was $113,000, $114,000. So presuming, depends on how we're operating there, but it's probably safe to assume there's going to be some degree of subsidy required from the municipality to ensure this operates. And I know from an affordability standpoint, the last time we set rates, we were the most affordable in the county. And again, that's something we may want to revisit at some point in time, especially considering affordability is also, where affordability is a bigger challenge, the subsidies are available. So if we were sitting back earlier in the year and we were going down this road, I might have considered putting our Thurber Street up through an RFP to see if anyone else is interested in running the daycare at that facility. But considering the timelines and the needs, I will support the recommendation as well.
Thanks, Sean. Peter, before I go to you, Sean, I hear what you're saying about the operating budget and concerns long-term about what that's going to do to the municipal budget. But I think, to echo Tammy's sentiment from earlier, we cannot rely on the private sector to step up and fill this void. If anything was apparent in her presentation, it's that there's a huge need for these types of services, and the lack of home care, unlicensed home care, or fully licensed home care is apparent, and we have been relying on the market to date to fill that need, and it is failing. So I'll come back to that, but I think that was more or less where Wendy was going, because her hand shot up as well. So we'll go to Peter, and then back to me, and then Wendy and Jay, you both had follow-up questions. Peter?
Thanks, Art. And the mayor was on where I was thinking of going as well, is that the town invests invests in our childcare now at St. Francis. And we're really opening a second childcare facility and the costs associated with that. That's really what we're saying, but we don't know what that annual cost would be because as an outsider looking at the formula, how many high needs kids, what's the ratio going to be, how many are subsidized? So it sounds like you can predict within a certain range, but you don't know what the operating budget is going to be because what's the demand and supply like? So we don't know what that cost is annually. Not that I'm opposed to that investment, but I would like to know what that is. And then the second point was if we have to open, let's say by December 31st or January 1, we don't have, I'm assuming we wouldn't have to have all 54 spaces. We'd have to have some kids in there. But then there must be a sweet spot in running these where too small and your costs are higher and you can get too big and then it affects quality. So I'm sure that there's a science to it, which I don't understand. But so those are my thoughts. One-time funding is easier to find than the ongoing operating. And I know I don't want to just chase it because it's there. It's a great thing. And I would like to understand what the ongoing operating costs are a little bit better.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I can.
Yep.
There's a couple of things. The service review actually would answer the two first questions, which are great questions. The idea of the cost of the service. And one of the things the service review identified was the method for actually determining that service piece. So where we had, in the past, we had capacity for 54 children. We'd staffed for 54 children, even if we only had 30 children. So of course, you can appreciate that the operating costs go up because you've got people that have capacity to provide more service, but there's not more children there. So we've set some parameters on how we decide that, which has been responsible for reducing the overall operating cost of the child care. And of course, those principles continue to get applied to this center as well. And right now we have 3 locations. We're looking at bringing that back to 4 locations for this kind of care. And in this case, where we're dealing with the younger age group, the 18 months to 4 years. So that's where the difference is. But the parameters, you're correct that we cannot predict reliably what the operating costs are going to be because of a number of factors. But one of the things that does help us to manage that risk is the parameters that we came up with in that service review that continue to be applied to the operation to make sure that we're operating at peak efficiency.
Thank you, Art. Peter, did you have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I have no problem supporting the request. I think it's a great use of leveraging partnership funding to refacilitate or rehabilitate rather our existing facility, and I think that's wonderful. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have a current CDC that has a play yard that has absolutely nothing in it. It's bald. And God love them, the children really don't care because they just love being outside. But it is unacceptable. I mean, they need some amount of stimulation in their outdoor play. And so to me, this is the first step in what needs to be many to actually meet our to be able to deliver a quality of life service that is integral to ensuring that there's growth in our community. It's unacceptable that there are 6 infant care spots in our town, in registered facilities. 6. What that means is that mothers are either giving up their career for 18 months because they can't find a spot, they're leaving their child in an environment that they are not terribly comfortable with, because we saw the results of Tammy's study, which indicated that mothers prefer, or parents rather, prefer to leave their children in a licensed facility, or like myself, they sacrifice part of the maternity leave to go back to work early because that's the time that they could get a spot. On both my maternity leaves, I went back at 9 months and 6 months respectively and lost time, valuable time with my children, because that was the only time I could secure a spot. That's unacceptable. So I'm happy to see that we're going to reutilize Thurber Street, but my hope is that this council will commit to looking at infant care spots, because 6 spaces in a population of ours is not sufficient. And there is not a willingness in the private market to meet that need. And if we want to continue to grow, that is something that this council needs to step up and do. And it will cost us money. It 100% will. But if we want to encourage young families, millennials in particular, to come to town, that's an integral piece. So I am supportive of this. I'm very disappointed in the survey, I will say. But I'm hoping that maybe we can go back to that at some point and explore the use of the Speak Up Smiths Falls tool. But I think what it does show is that there's an abundant need for infant care spaces. And while this is the first step to get us there, I think we all need to acknowledge that our efforts do not end with this decision to put $100,000 of the county's money into this facility. So on that, sorry, Mama Bear Claus came out on that one. Wendy, you had further comments, and then Jay did.
I'm not sure I want to go next. I appreciate what you say, and my family is in the same boat with a lot of this. On the other hand, just before I go back to the point I was going to make before Mama Bear came out, it is also my hope and wish for all young parents is that employers will get involved in childcare and providing it. I think having the childcare centers attached to schools is a perfect scenario, especially when you have older children. But we are coming to the day where it's going to mean that employers need to step up to solve some of this. Back to Sean's, as I share some of, I agree with some of the concerns you raised, but I also comfort myself somewhat in knowing that we have, if not the lowest, one of the lowest rates in the county, and so we have some room. We're not starting at the top. We may need to increase the rates to accomplish everything and provide for as many children as we can. And I'm not afraid of that. Because we have traditionally been way below market. So I feel we have room.
Thank you. Jay?
Yeah, I'm not going to beleaguer it because everyone's in support. So the only, Sean had concerns, and I understand that. But I always look at it from an economic development point of view. And when people are looking to move here, we have a small percentage of the people working at Tweed that are living here. There's other problems in terms of finding homes. I mean, there's a house down the street from me that went for sale on Thursday, and it was sold today. So just, that's another thing. But when you can offer, you can say we've got, excellent childcare here if you're going to move here. That's another point. But and one other question, because you mentioned it, and Nikki was talking about the infant care. Some of the renovations are going to be able to accommodate infant care at Thurber? No.
No, not at this point.
But is that doable?
We would have to take a look at using that space and then uptake from the other, the rest of the spaces as well. So it's a longer term piece. And, there was made mention of kind of chasing the money, and I mean, it's fortuitous that we have this money available, but it also fits our strategy, and just to remind council that it's part of the strategic priorities identified by council in the plan. So we're actually moving that up ahead a little bit. So I think the stars kind of line up for it, which is why I brought it forward for discussion. And just, Madam Chair, just to update, we have been having discussions with the school board around the playground at St. Francis. And there is some funding actually that came from the county that funded a plan for what that playground should look like, and we're trying to work with that plan to get it to be a little bit more affordable for the partners. We are working on it.
Perfect. I know that the CDC parent group on the board has been diligently selling cakes and raffle tickets to pay for that playground. So I'm hoping that they can get a little bit more assistance to make that possible sooner rather than later. Okay, thank you. Moving on, if there's no further questions on CDC, that resolution is not coming forward tonight. It'll come forward at next council meeting, correct? Okay, with that, we're moving on quickly to the 3-year agreement for the Small Business Enterprise Center. This is a resolution that will be coming forward tonight at council if we give direction to do so. So with that, Jennifer?
Thank
Take it
you.
away.
So just a few quick comments about this report. The Small Business Advisory Center is a valuable service center for startups and small businesses in Lanark County and the town of Smiths Falls. It's located at Cornelia Court and is co-housed with Valley Heartland and has been in operation since 1988. They offer summer company programming to students, startup programming for new businesses, and coaching and support for existing small businesses, and it's become a critical part of our economic success. The program also receives funding from the County of Lanark, the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, and some from the town of Smiths Falls towards their cost of rent. We also manage the contract and oversee the staff. So the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade has once again renewed the contract for the center, this time with a 3-year term. And this new contract combines all programs into one, which is helpful. So it's our staff recommendation to council. That council authorized the clerk and mayor to enter into a new 3-year agreement with the ministry in order to receive the money for this important service.
Thank you, Jennifer. I see nodding heads. Does anybody have questions? No? All right, moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow is up next. You're here to request us for a resolution to follow this meeting at council tonight to award contract for your engineering services?
That's correct.
Perfect.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Each and every year, the water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities receive various infrastructure repairs and upgrades that often require the input of a professional engineer. In many cases, this expertise may involve various combinations of civil, electrical, mechanical, and/or structural engineering disciplines. And on June 10th, staff provided council with a report, and the direction from council was to go ahead and authorize staff to proceed with a request for proposals seeking standing offers for engineering services in support of operations at the water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities. And further, that the terms of any standing offer issued for civil, electrical, mechanical, and/or structural services be authorized for a period not exceeding 3 years, consistent with the procurement bylaw. On July 10th, the town released RFP 19PW11 for professional services relating to the standing offer agreements. The proposals developed at this time were modeled on other successful proposals actively used in other municipalities, including the town of Arnprior and the town of Mississippi Mills. On August 22nd, the bid closed with a total of 10 proposals submitted. Each of these proposals were reviewed by the Director of Public Works and Utilities and myself, and scored according to the following merit-based system. We awarded 10 points for experience and qualifications of the firm and their principal consultant, 20 points for experience and qualifications of the team members, 20 points for available resources, 20 points for value-added commitments, 10 points for references, and 20 points for their financial proposal. Based on the review of all the proposals, the following 4 firms scored highest across all 6 categories and are recommended for approval under RFP 19PW011, as they have the required resources or have the ability to provide support for all the required disciplines. EVB Engineering, EXP Services Incorporated, J.L. Richards and Associates Limited, and R.V. Anderson Associates Limited. Just a comment from last time, for larger assignments, we could still choose to solicit proposals from more than one of the firms on the standing offer list to ensure that we are obtaining the best value and to ensure fairness in the assignment process. And we are also keeping with the terms of the standing offer agreements. And we also do still have the ability to choose to proceed with a full public RFP outside the standing offers should the assignments not fall within the stipulated areas of expertise. So the recommendation at this time is that council, the corporation, the town of Smiths Falls, award standing offer for engineering services, treatment facilities, RFP 19PW011 to R.V. Anderson Associates Limited, EVB, J.L. Richards, and EXP Services Incorporated, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the final contract agreements with each of the 4 successful firms.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. Barlow. Any questions? No, I see nodding heads. You have your resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Clerk Costello is up. Carrie, you were requesting a variance passed tonight to the sign bylaw to allow a banner sign on Russell Street for the Bustle on Russell.
I think you just covered it.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully a resolution can come forward this evening as it is time sensitive. The DVA and Chamber are partners in this event. It takes place October 4th, according to our sign bylaw. Banner signs need council's approval. It has been vetted through all of the departments. The two concerns were height from emergency services to ensure that emergency vehicles could get down Russell Street. That has been rectified. They're going to ensure that the banner's at least 16 feet high. The second issue was the structural support, I guess, of the two posts that they're going to be tied to. That has again been rectified. They're going to use a mesh banner so that the wind can go through it and won't harm the posts in any capacity. So it's staff's recommendation that an exception to the sign bylaw come forward this evening so that they can have their banner in place for this event.
Thank you, Carrie. Peter, you have a question?
No, it's just a comment, and this is a familiar refrain for me, that these kind of things, I believe, are really in the staff domain, and when we get, like, I think the staff are more than qualified to make these kind of decisions. I know that's our existing rules, and I look forward to having those revised so we can let the experts make these kind of decisions.
No, great point. And the bylaw does speak out of both sides of its mouth on this provision. One, it gives CBO authority. On the other, it says council. So I erred on the side of caution and came to council.
Wendy?
I ditto to what Councillor McKenna said, but it does give me great joy to have the Chamber of Commerce and the DVA cooperate on this event. I don't know that they've ever cooperated before on this event, so I'm really looking forward to, under the guidance of both boards, and Leslie Richardson and Gail Giroux of the DVA, Bustle on Russell, October 4th, 4:30 to 10:30, Russell Street. Be there or be square.
You're going in a dunk tank, I hear.
That's Jay.
Oh, that's Jay. Oh, all right, good to know.
I'm going in axe throwing.
Okay. I don't know if that's a wiser choice, but good luck with that. Lorraine?
I just want to end with saying, for the 9 years I've been doing this job, I've wanted banners, signposts to hold banners in our downtown, so yay, we got one for one day.
All right, Carrie, you got your erection of a sign banner. Thank you. Janet, you're up next. You have budget monitoring. It's for council information only. There is no action coming out of it.
Thank you. I'll try to make it brief. So I'm here this evening to provide council with a high-level update, excuse me, after completing August budget monitoring. We're still continuing on a positive trend. The overall surplus is currently projected at 51,000, albeit it is slightly lower than July's, which was approximately 120. The breakdown is water and distribution is currently at a deficit of about 108,000. Wastewater deficit of approximately 28,000, and tax supported is a surplus of approximately 187. And with your report, there was a variance summary, so if you had any questions regarding any of those entries, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Janet? Seeing none. Good job, Janet.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping us in line. Carrie, you're back up to talk about the terms of reference for our housing task force.
Thank you. As council is aware, this is one of our strategic objectives that we adopted in our strategic plan. So what you have before you this evening is a draft terms of reference that outlines what we intend to do with the task force. The first initiative to undertake this priority is to form the task force and develop our mandate. The task force is to investigate planning tools to encourage the type of housing that are in demand, examine housing needs, review provincial policy, and refine policies to remove barriers, attract developers, and examine planning approval timelines. So the terms of reference were circulated with the agenda package on Thursday, I believe. They're attached as Appendix A. And if council has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. The report, or the task force terms of reference, does detail what the scope of work would be, as well as deliverables, with a final report coming to council in 2020. So if council has any questions, I'd be pleased to take them.
Peter, to start.
Thanks, Garrett. It's great to see this on our agenda. I did reach out to a colleague who is a housing expert. I asked him for his thoughts on it, and he asked if we had considered, and it was a good question, whether we actually have a priority population. We talk about housing generally, or do we want to get a little more specific on our terms of reference and actually identify, affordable housing, whatever that is, or is there a population that or could that, what's the lens we're going to look at it through? Is it all housing? So he just asked this question that had we given it some thought as to who's the priority, and maybe that would emerge out of the housing strategy, out of the work that you do, and then we'd say, all right, now we know who the priority groups are. But not going through it with that lens, I wondered. He wondered.
Great insight. So that was a question that actually Senior Planner Grenke and I bounced around, whether we wanted to look at affordable housing, subsidized housing, and also CAO Morris and myself last week. But we decided that we went with what was in the actual strategic objective, which is just housing in general. So the terms of, or the scope of the work will, the final report will show what type of housing, whether it's affordable, which age groups it's geared to, things of that nature. So it's going to be all housing in general. Councillor McKenna.
The second point that he raised that we talked about with him was a mention to include innovation or best practices. Like, what are the innovation ideas? And we want to really focus on those during this initial scope. And I'm sure we will do that, but to be mentioning it specifically might add some, again, focus, because it's such a big topic when we get into housing, unless we can narrow it somehow. So that was generally it's great. I'm looking forward to getting started, but I have a preference to make sure that people with the least resources and most in need are going to be some of our priority populations. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy, I'll come back to you if you don't mind. Carrie, I have a couple comments. One is just that it may benefit from having a reader read through the policy, just because there's a lot of typos and some inconsistencies and overlap. For example, there's 2 separate sections talking about quorum for the committee, so you may just want to double check it.
Certainly.
Pardon?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only thing I'm hesitant about on this policy is the timeline. One, because I don't know that 6 months is going to give us adequate time to have a thorough discussion on the subject matter. This is a massive, massive topic, and I don't think you want to rush it. I get that we're in a bit of a housing crisis right now, but I don't think we want to rush this to print and adoption for the sake of a 6-month timeline. The other reservation I have is with the new policy for the PPS, which dramatically changes the way developers will build housing and shifts the focus away from affordable demand as a public interest and into market rate demand. That's huge. And if the new PPS comes out with those provisions in it, it's dramatically going to change the tools and mechanisms that municipalities have to actually require developers to build housing. So again, I mean, we may want to pause on the actual final publication of this until the province gives clear indication of what the priority for housing is going to be in Ontario and how we are going to develop housing in Ontario. But my other hope coming out of the task force, and I'm hoping that it'll be up for discussion with the members sitting on the task force, is what the actual role and mandate is of the municipality to play in this. We are not the housing provider. We have not historically partnered in 3P projects to provide housing. And while we do have the ability to offer financial incentives and create affordable housing policy through our land use planning documents, we've been doing that for years. And I think there's only so much more that you can do to create that through policy. So how is it that the municipality is going to facilitate housing construction and affordable housing construction for key demographics, to Councillor McKenna's point, without overstepping or extending ourselves into a business that is not our mandate. So I look forward to seeing what comes back from the task force as far as recommendations to what our mandate should be. Wendy?
I think you made
Mike?
I think you've made some of the points that I was going to address, but I'm glad to see this get to the horseshoe, because as you said, we are in a housing crisis.
Yeah.
And if the most we can do right now is let's get the task force formed so that we can at least begin to see where we should go. I think I completely support staff's recommendation.
Peter?
Just remind us that affordable housing isn't necessarily building more housings. It can be, there's many, many strategies. One might be to actually prevent illegal evictions. It might be informing the population of how they can stay in their own home. So it's not necessarily building more. It's sometimes keeping people in their home. And is there something the municipality can do through bylaws or just public awareness on how people, to prevent being evicted, not even illegally, but how do you support people and work with the landlords and the tenants to build that relationship? Because the last Stats Canada data I looked at for Smiths Falls, we have like 45% of our housing stock is rental. It's a very high number. And in that population, 1 in 4 are moving every year. So there's massive movement going on all of the time as people are either looking for something better or something more affordable. So there's a lot of, and if we could slow down, it causes huge disruption in families. And so anything we can do, so I want us to think broader than just more housing stock. It might be there's a broad range of strategies that we can consider, and other municipalities have these in their toolbox. And I know we're not going to reinvent the wheel. Canada Mortgage and Housing has huge assets available to help us, including staff that could participate. So I look forward to having that conversation.
Thanks, Peter. Those are really great points. Sean?
Yeah, thanks, Director Costello, for bringing this forward. And I think, we've been, we identified this as a key strategic priority. We've committed to doing what we can within the scope of things that we can do. And I guess into Councillor Dwyer's comments, or I guess questions really, but hopefully through this task force, we can answer those questions and come up with some clear direction as to what we may or may not be able to do or willing to do or want to do in the future. And understanding it's a changing landscape provincially, it could be a changing landscape federally as well as we go through this next 6-month period. So I'd like to stick to the timelines we have in place, but understanding that if major disruption happens mid-course, that we may have to come back and make some changes to the overall objectives. But it's encouraging to get to this point, and I think we've got a community that's understanding we have some housing needs. And the Councillor McKenna's comments, if 1 in 4 are moving every year in the rental market, and say it's 43% of our residents, they're moving from what may be affordable today to what is definitely not affordable when they move. So timelines are pretty critical here. So I'm anxious to move this forward.
Thanks, Sean. Before I let Peter speak again, because he's so keen, does anybody else have any comments? No? Okay, Peter.
Just a question regarding the chair of the task force. Is it tradition or is it a bylaw that a member of council couldn't chair this group, and why a member of the public? Is it just our tradition, or is it actually a rule somewhere that it shouldn't be a member of council?
That the chair should be a member of council?
Yes.
I would say it's more of a best practice.
I just wonder about it on this one. I just wonder about considering. Yeah.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I think to echo Director Costello, it's a past practice that could be changed if council felt that there was a strategic or tactical reason to have a member of council as the chair. That can be changed.
Okay. On that note, actually, thanks for raising it, Peter. One of the things I did pick up on was some reticence around having the chair as the spokesperson appointed to the committee, particularly if it is not a member of council or the mayor. That's not typically something that we permit for our committees. I'm wondering why that's in there.
That just, I did it, use templates from various municipalities, and that was kind of one theme I saw throughout, but if that's not something that council wishes, that can certainly be amended.
Okay, well, it's just me. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. But also, Carrie, can you confirm that you are not asking us to fight to death for the seat on this? Because I feel like there will be a fight to the death.
Not this evening.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Okay, the terms of reference will come back at the next regular.
Yes, and I'll make some minor amendments from this evening's discussion, and it will come forward October 7th.
Perfect. Okay,
Yes.
thanks, Carrie. Oh, Wendy? Oh, thank you. Sorry.
So direction on the chair would be helpful before we finish the terms of reference. So if there's a desire to do that, we can incorporate the chair must be a member of council.
Or just not speaking on behalf of the committee was more where I was getting heebie-jeebies. But I leave that open. Anybody else get heebie-jeebies on that one? Jay and then Sean? Oh, and Chris.
Yeah, I think for the chair, I mean, we're on, Councillor Alford and I are on the planning committee, and the chair is not one of us. And I think optically, it's probably a good best practice to have the chair as a layman, as they call them, because I think that invests the community in the work that's being done, rather than a politician. That's just my thought.
No, I think that's a good point.
I have no problem either way.
Sean and then Chris?
Yeah, this is really reflective of our strategic priority.
Okay.
And it's probably in the top, maybe not, if it's not number one, it's right up there as one of our key strategic priorities for this term of council. And considering probably the volume of work and the liaison going between staff and chair, I think it's, and tying in the need for a spokesperson, I think it's going to be responsible for us to have a member of council, myself, or somebody else on the task force to serve as chair. I think it's just for all those reasons of continuity, working with his staff, and the spokesperson really should reflect the tone of council.
Okay, Peter?
I like Councillor Brennan's comments regarding standing committees, because I think you develop the expertise with the lay people who work, and they get to do it year in and year out, and they're all part of that. This is a very time-limited, strategic, as the mayor points out, priority. So you could compromise and say that the chair will be elected by the committee or something, as opposed to insisting it not be a member of council or something like that. But I just think it's too short term. It's too, you want to move it right along. The standing committees have their work to do, and they get very good at it. And I really like the fact that the community members are involved in sharing and participating in those. But this one might be a little different.
You know what, for the sake of argument, I mean, the mayor holds a seat on this committee. I gather you're not going to give that up to a delegate. Nope. I would actually table that Sean, as our mayor, be both the chair and the spokesperson for this committee. You have a fair amount of knowledge on the subject matter, and I know that you are making efforts through various forms of education to further your knowledge on the subject. So I think you can speak to the efforts of the task force very well, but I think to Councillor McKenna's point, chairing a meeting is hard work, particularly when you have a large mandate and you want to try and keep things on point. So I would have a great deal of confidence in you as chair, if I do say so. Wendy?
I would support that approach to this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, perfect. So is that clear direction?
Yes.
CIO Morris? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Sorry, I've got a lost babysitter. Hold on one second. Okay, moving on, we have the CIP application for funding for 14 William Street West. Carl has the staff report. Thank you, Carl. I think we would all appreciate it if you kept it very brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm bringing forward a funding recommendation made by the CIP Evaluation Committee pertaining to an application for a duplex dwelling on William Street. So in this case, the applicant has applied to the town for CIP funding to support the exterior renovation of a residential building. The property once hosted a restaurant on the main floor, but I understand that's been vacant for a few years. So the applicant approached staff to discuss the property and its applicability to the plan. He was encouraged to explore funding or finding a commercial tenant for the property, however, indicated he was unable to do so and instead wished to pursue a full residential renovation to develop 2 units. And he proposes to gear those towards higher rent tenants. So the owner, with the understanding there's been limited CIP approvals for multi-residential properties, the owner decided he wanted to float the idea by the CIP Evaluation Committee, and the committee indicated an openness to this, provided that the application and the ask took care to really specify and build up some of the key design features on the property. So this application did go back and forth a few times as the committee sought more information and details, and encouraging the submission to zero in on some of the key items and bring out the best of the building and some of the features, including the heritage features that have been on the property that certainly has degraded over time. So the summary of what's being proposed in the specific asks are attached to the report. So there was some substantial discussion around the committee table about this application, as duplex improvements have not often been funded, even though they're not specifically excluded from CIP consideration. Either way, the committee did welcome the investment into the property and the improvement of a property that's quite high profile. So in looking at that, and some of the discussion here is that the committee felt the CIP process allowed us to influence the developer to invest more funds to refinish the original wood, focus on restoring and bringing back the stained glass, repoint the brick and stone, and pick a more sympathetic heritage design rather than going an easier route and covering up some of the architectural attributes, and also provided a much needed high quality residential area in the downtown core. So just to note as well, the paint includes the fascia and the soffit as well. So the one item that was not completely finalized through that process was the treatment of the side door that's currently covered in plywood, and I think certainly anybody on the committee would agree is not visibly in the best of condition. The proponent proposes a board and batten finish with the option of a decorative door. However, the committee's priority is ensuring that it blends into the surrounding brickwork. So the outcome, so that was what the committee was looking for, and if desired by council, would be implemented as a condition of the funding agreement. So I'll also note that some of the items here, such as the hurricane door and the garage, may be at the edge of what's normally covered through a CIP project. However, the overall funding ask and cost of the project exceeds the $10,000 that's available. The committee noted that since full release of the funds is tied to the completion of all of the items, the committee felt it would be good practice to leverage the funding of the key facade improvements to ensure the completion of the other works on the property. So that's the funding recommendation that the CIP Evaluation Committee brought forward, and we'll seek council's direction on this.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Chris, you're going to take lead, and of note, you are the council representative on this committee, correct?
Yes, and the wet towel recently. There was a lot of discussion on this one, and I just want to kind of give a little bit of both sides. For my impression, yes, it is a residential project, but for me, the discussion was more centered around the quality of the renovations, not so much the use of the property, because it was originally a residential house. I just want to give some ideas out there, because from the last application to this application, I am concerned to the direction of the CIP, its purpose and its function right now in town. Brick repair, for some background, there's two reasons the brick's failing. One is that there's moisture getting on it from a lack of eaves trough, and that can be fixed. The other is that it's painted, and the brick doesn't have a hard seal, so it can't breathe. So that's what goes into there. We've got the windows. If you notice, the proposed windows in the elevation do not match the original geometry and shape of the of what would have been in there when the house was built. They're just a rectangular window in a curved shape. So it's a standard replacement. The stained glass repair is really exciting because the more we preserve the stained glass, the longer it lasts, and it's one of those things that it's great stewardship for a property. Access sidewalk to the upper unit. With the CIP, I'm always into the bells and whistles, and the way it's been put in, it needs to happen for a fire escape. I'm not sure if there's any bells and whistles associated with that or how you'd get an access sidewalk to really improve the curb appeal. To replace the plywood covering the former doorway, I think it's important to note that board and batten isn't used anywhere else on that property from my investigation. So you're taking a completely new building design style, you're using it to fill in a hole, and that's going to stand out no matter, it's nicer than plywood. Is it, that's up to speculation. Personally, I love it when you've got a door like that that's not going to be used. You put a solid door in it, you fill it in, you put a little Juliet-style balcony or something in front of it, and I think that still respects the original design of that space of the house. Main entrance stairs from the proposed elevation to the current is pretty similar. There, and hurricane door cover, and an access garbage storage shed, which will be seen from William Street, but again, I think for a multi-residential building needs to be done anyway. So I think this one's better than the last one, but I'm still struggling with where this program's going. So
Thanks, Chris. Any comments? Wendy?
I mean, I'm always excited to see someone rehabbing a building. And this was a beautiful old house at one time. I don't know anything about the CIP, but it's coming to council for approval, and I would, as I understand it, this is for facade improvements to make our downtown core more in keeping with the heritage of the buildings that these are taking place in. And the one thing that stuck out to me was there's a shed or something. Now we're doing a garbage storage shed. I know it's a lot of money, that we would grant money for things like this. I don't think it's related, in my estimation, it's not related to the facade of this beautiful building. But that's my comments, and usually I don't comment on other people's committees. But seeing as how the council rep is raising flags, I'm gonna go. It's odd to me that a storage shed would be included in this.
Okay, thanks. Jay?
Yeah, I mean, the minutes of the Municipal Heritage Committee are included in this, so.
CIP committee.
Or the CIP committee are included in this package, and so their job, in my view, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Carl or Chris, is to come up with recommendations that come to this table, and you've come up with one. I'm going to support it. I'd also, maybe for clarity, first of all, we're not funding all of this. This is a small piece of what this gentleman is going to invest in an older home in our downtown, which I applaud him for. And the other part of it, I always try to make this point when these come up, because people say, well, you're giving money away to private, and actually, there's strings attached. Can you just outline how the payment works? Because there's an approval process afterwards, right, Carl?
Yes, so if council approves, or if committee of the whole here approves all or part of the funding request by Mr. Barlow, then that would be implemented in a funding agreement, and that agreement would specify certain things that would need to be done at certain stages of the project. So he would need to achieve substantial completion, which is most of the project, in order to receive the first installment, and then final completion. So then, of course, that's reviewed to make sure it was actually completed, and the costs. If there's a cost overrun, council is simply if council approves this, is simply approving a certain dollar figure. So if the cost exceeds that from his end, then we can't give more than what's being considered for approval.
Okay, thanks for that. No, I mean, I'm gonna support the recommendation, and I look forward to more work being done in the downtown, and for my friend Councillor McGuire, if he's got concerns, I hope you bring those. I don't see them, but if you bring them forward at the committee level, and for the next one, hopefully you can get more comfortable with what we're trying to do here. So.
Thanks, Jay. Lorraine?
No, I agree with Councillor McGuire. I sat on the CIP Community Improvement Program, and this particular part of it is for the facade of the original building. It's to promote the character of the heritage building that it is in. Now, I don't have a lot of trouble with the veranda that he's putting on is certainly better than what was there, but for this owner to get the money that's meant for this kind of program, he's supposed to be duplicating what was there, or trying hard to do that. And in my view, he hasn't. And the same with the doorway that was there. I agree with Councillor McGuire. To put that on, we'll fix it, and it won't even look that bad. But for us to pay for it as part of this program, I wouldn't support it either. I think your committee is trying to design a handout or a booklet of some kind that gives kind of a guideline to what the whole program was intended to do. Because I mean, when it was started, and we're not the only municipality that's using it, but it was started because usually to restore or renovate a building that's a very old building to what it looked like when it was in its heyday costs a lot of money. So the program was there as just an incentive to help people to do it right. But if people are using it just to accommodate, what they want to do with the building, and it's not still like it was, to me, it defeats the purpose of the program.
Thanks, Lorraine. Sean? Oh, actually, sorry, Chris, did you have comments to Lorraine's question about the handout?
The chair,
Sorry.
I could just, we are looking at the evaluation criteria for the facade improvement program, which is what this one came in on. And I know town staff are working really hard. There seems to be a lot of balls in the air of getting some, design work done, or some kind of proposed facade work so that the vision gets more cohesive. I think in response to Councillor Brennan's comments, Mr. Schmears on the committee, he presented earlier tonight, a question he asked me a lot is, well, why would we fund this downtown and not fund one, just on the other side of the border? And I think on a project like this, it's a very valid question, because as you say, it's hard to get those features up to the standard that, you look next door at the Rideau Hotel, they had no problem putting the curved windows back in. So there is a precedent for this, and I think the CIP is trying to raise the bar, but it's going to be, it's a work in progress in the right direction anyway.
Sean?
Yeah, I was here when we developed the CIP policy, and that's 2 terms ago, and last term when we agreed to fund it and put it into practice. And if I go back to, I guess, my thought process at the time, it reflects what Councillor Allen has said, and really what Councillor McGuire said. It was, while we have a CIP area, it's really designed to enhance and preserve the way things should be. Maybe not the way things, in some ways, I respect the fact this gentleman is putting a considerable amount of money into a building which really needs it, especially with the place next door, 12 that was demolished to make room for the Rideau Hotel parking lot. This is much more visual. It's much more visual to the street and towards the people up at the Rideau Hotel eventually. But we also, I guess, to be conscious, we I mean, this is a recommendation of the CIP committee, doesn't mean we have to follow through with exactly that amount. I mean, we could, I don't know how much you want to go down and break down all the elements here as to what should and what shouldn't count, but and Councilor McGuire, maybe you can confirm, so with this plan, or Carl, the door that's got the plywood on it now will have a fake door there in the future, is that confirmed, or is it board and batten?
Through the chair, the proponent has indicated that he's proposing board and batten. However, if a desirable fake door comes up on the market, he'd like to put it there and seek funding for that. So that's pretty open-ended. I think it's fair to say that that's, if the committee would like to provide some direction on, either if you want to even leave it in there in the first place, or at least provide some direction on what you would want to see. I know that was one of the issues that the committee, the CIP committee, spent a fair bit of time on, and the CIP committee's primary objective was making sure that it, color-wise, it more or less lined up with what was around there. It didn't stand out as much as it does now. However, that is one of those items that there is a little bit of up in the air here, and we'll certainly take committee of the whole's direction on that.
So it comes down to, I guess, us, and I mean, the CIP has provisions which allow this to be permitted, but it's each of us which has, I guess, makes a moral compass as we think it believes it fits what we're looking for. And I think, I mean, Real may have a door over there that would be very suitable as an example, or there might be other places around, Rito Antiques. So if we're going to move ahead and make an approval here, I would want it a requirement that it is a heritage-style door that meets your standards, Carl. We can leave it up to you if it meets your standards, rather than board and batten, which I agree does not fit. And I'm very hesitant to support the full recommendation of the 10,000. I mean, I know we've got lots of money in CIP at this stage, but I'm not convinced that every element here really fits the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish through the CIP. So I'll leave it at that, a little further discussion.
Thanks, Sean. Wendy, before I come to you, I'm going to give some comments. I'm not supportive of this application for a lot of reasons. And I'll start with the age-old question. Why are we funding this one and not the one next door? The idea behind funding the defined area of downtown was to push the envelope and make development better. There's economic value in someone picking up a property and renovating it or restoring it into a more attractive and higher renting building. Doesn't help our affordable housing question, but there is value in that. And there are lots of people within this community that are doing it, myself included. And I own a property that is in the downtown core that is a duplex. So why would my property be eligible for funding for this project when it's really not adding any additional value? And in my mind as a landowner, there is value in me restoring that on my own into something that I want to see. The idea of leveraging municipal partner funding into these projects was to push the developer to give us something that met our vision and our objective for the downtown. I don't feel like what has been presented to us meets the objectives of the downtown revitalization plan. It doesn't meet the values of the CIP, and it does not have anything to do with the design guidelines that council adopted. So I'm not supportive of this. I also question where this goes after this. If we allow a duplex to apply for CIP funding, what's to stop somebody from buying a single detached dwelling and putting an accessory unit in it and now becoming eligible for funding? It opens the floodgates for eligibility within the downtown core that's outside the original contemplated mandate of this program. So for those reasons, I am not supportive of this, and I would encourage staff to go back to the applicant and take a good look at what our design guidelines say, as well as the objectives of both those planning documents, to come back with a design that actually meets what the intended program was supposed to do, because this does not. Wendy? Thanks, Corey.
I agree that in this particular case, I would see that the options 3 or 4 would be what I would be hopeful to, I realize we've got money in the CIP account that we could spend, that this person that wants to redo this red brick house is investing money. I get all that and appreciate it. I'm just not sure that this is in keeping with the CIP.
No. Chris?
So I was playing a bit of devil's advocate there, and I wasn't sure the conversation was going to go the way it did. I would go for option 2, just because the stained glass is a very valuable feature. And if at least we do that, we show that we want to do business, we're open to the plan, and it gets some money out for part of the project sooner than later. I don't know, is there any thoughts on that?
Lorraine?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I also, like, there's a lot of restoration work that could be done with the original woodwork. It's a beautiful house, the top part of the house could be restored beautifully, and then the side exit could even be filled in with, just glass or something that, is going to celebrate the building itself. There are things he could do that could come back to the CIP, in my feeling. Because it is a beautiful old building. It used to be a beautiful restaurant many years ago. But
Okay.
the stained glass, I would agree, that meets that program.
Okay, so Sean's giving me 3 fingers. Peter, do you have another comment?
I haven't had any.
Sorry, your comments, please. Sorry, Peter. It's late.
I'm interested, I'm really keen on what Councilor McGuire is suggesting on number 2, but I'm afraid that unless we start release some but not all of the funds for the application, where is that mitigated? Not
Yeah.
here, I hope. I hope we're not going to start to redesign the poor guy's building here.
Yeah.
So are we saying, yes, it meets most of the criteria, we can send it back and let the committee do that work? If we choose number 2, which I'm supporting of,
Well, okay, before Chris goes, Chris quasi put a motion on the floor for option 2, which is to pass a resolution and subsequent bylaw for the release of some but not all of the funds for the application. So we could vote on that, but also Sean's giving me 3 fingers, which I think indicates that he wants to put a motion on the floor for option number 3. Yes, okay. So let's vote on Chris's motion first. So Chris's motion, not to put words in your mouth, do you want to do it?
So just for clarification, there's nothing to say if we approve E and F, they can't come back with another application. There's no limit on the number of times an applicant can come to the committee. So by doing E and F, we essentially would get 3 done. By doing 2 for E and F and rejecting the rest, we're essentially going to 3 for all the other ones. If the stained glass is something we see value in that we'd like to subsidize. So with that, I'd put can I wait for Lorraine?
Yeah.
A motion on the floor to accept option 2 under E and F, under the repair restoration table for stained glass repair, E and F stained glass 3rd floor attic, for a total cost of about $1,500.
Okay, is there discussion on that motion before we vote on it? Jay?
Yeah, I just think we're getting in the weeds here, and we're doing the work of the committee.
Thank you, noted. Any other comments? Okay, I actually will have a comment. I'd rather see this go back for further review and let the applicant prioritize what they would like to apply for funding on. So I would not support your motion, but I'll call the vote. All those in favor of, Lorraine, for context, we're voting on option 2, which is to approve the stained glass work only. And Chris has put the motion on the floor. So all those in favor of Chris's motion? This is option 2? No? Okay. All those in favor of option 3, which is to send this back for review at the committee? Lordy. Okay, that just died. Okay, so then that leaves us with a couple options, or somebody can create a new motion. We can either accept the resolution as it currently exists, drafted by Carl, or we could deny the application request for funding.
Well, I could see 3 being that the direction would be that everyone agreed that the stained glass work would be accepted, but we were giving him an opportunity to look at some of the things that the CIP would cover in his restoration. whatever, if everybody would agree to that.
Okay, so wording on the motion for direction to Carl. Sean, do you want to summarize this?
Essentially that council is supportive of supporting items E and the CIP application for items E and F, but wishes to see a refined plan, a refined application that better meets the core principles of the CIP as discussed at committee of the whole meeting tonight.
Okay.
I mean, there's going to be minutes, and the media probably picks up on this a little bit, so I think you should get the tone of what we believe is the core principles and what we're looking for, and an opportunity to come back, understanding that, yeah, we're going to be fine with E and F, but let's look at the whole thing before we get kind of a check.
Okay. Support for that one? Yes, I see nodding heads. Lorraine? Sorry, did you have a comment, or are you just nodding?
I'm nodding.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there you go. Carl, you got your direction?
So certainly I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the level of review around the committee table. I think if this comes back, we'll certainly have greater attention to a lot of these. Is there any particular items here that the committee would like for when I reach out to the proponent, any particular items to have a
You know what I would suggest is perhaps you could have a dialogue with Chris, who's our council liaison on this committee, and you could talk about what the scope of the application review could look like. Chris, are you okay with that?
I agree.
Perfect, fantastic. We still have 2 more items to go. Wendy?
I'm going to suggest it was 8:30 by the council.
Yeah.
If we could defer, unfortunately,
Ice?
men are staying here all this long time, but as it's informational, and I do have some questions on the report that I'd like to just defer to the next time.
I have no problem with that. Anybody else? All in favor? Perfect. Now, Carrie, you do need a motion. No, it can, 5 seconds. Okay, Carrie's going to speak to us very quickly about moving the location of our meeting for an October meeting.
Thank you. This is a very quick item.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring forward the accessibility terms of reference for the advisory committee on October 16th. Considering that I would like to have a good discussion about that, I think we should have it in an accessible location, as I hope there will be people with accessibility requirements or needs that would like to attend. So we need a exemption to the procedural bylaw to allow us to move the location October 16th.
Thank you. Are we doing that tonight?
Yes.
All in favor? No?
Oh, sorry, my apologies, next week.
Next week. All right. All in favor? Fantastic. We have no standing items, thank God. Adjournment. Wendy, seconded by Jay. All in favor? Thank you.
We got one bylaw, 2 motions.
I got them restart.
Sure.
Do the agenda, Sean? First bylaw.
Love it yet? Oh, sure.
Smart, hey?
I'm gonna cash on it. Let's see. I do. Okay.
21 and a half.
So how much has Legion made on this so far?
Remember this. Transfer.
3, you said?
That's. It is his turn.
Immediate needs, really.
You better get the winning one.
Oh,
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Good evening, welcome to this special meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, September 23rd. We have everyone here this evening. I've got no mayor's announcements. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. There is none. No delegations, no adoption of minutes. I assume no reports this evening. And we have two bylaws. First one with Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna. Bylaw 10077, 2019, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. By Councillor Allen, second by Councillor McKenna. Bylaw 10077-2019, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and the right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carry. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, this is a priority issue that we discussed tonight, and it's a continuation of our agreement with the Small Business Advisory Center. And we were told by Director Miller that we're going to have another 3-year agreement with this group, and that they've been a great partner for us in many ways, and we're really pleased that this can go on again.
Further comment? Third reading, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna, bylaw 10077, 2019, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade be now read a third time, and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10077, 2019.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor McKenna. Bylaw 10077-2019, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a transfer payment agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. We now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10077-2019. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Alfred, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize an exemption of bylaw 6018-94 as amended, being a bylaw for prohibiting or regulating the erection of signs, advertising devices, posting of notices, portable signs, and merchandise displays within the town of Smith Falls be received and read a first time and take it as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alfred, seconded by Councillor McKenna. Bylaw 10078-2019, that a bylaw to authorize an exemption to bylaw 6018-94 as amended, being a bylaw for prohibiting or regulating the erection of signs, advertising devices, posting of notices, portable signs, and merchandise displays within the town of Smith Falls be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Alfred?
Yes, Your Worship, this is an exemption so that Bustle on Russell, which is October 4th, a cooperative effort between the Chamber and the DBA, can hang a banner over the street. That's what the exception's for.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, third reading, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to authorize an exemption to bylaw 6018-94 as amended, being a bylaw for prohibiting or regulating the erection of signs, advertising devices, posting of notices, portable signs, and merchandise displays within the town of Smith Falls be read, signed, sealed, and numbered 10078-2019.
Moved by Councillor Alfred, second by Councillor McKenna. There's a joke here that I missed out on somewhere along the way. Bylaw 10078-2019. We're getting giddy. The bylaw to authorize an exemption to bylaw 6018-94 as amended, being a bylaw for prohibiting or regulating the erection of signs, advertising devices, posting of notices, portable signs, and merchandise displays within the town of Smith Falls. Be read, signed, sealed, and numbered 10078-2019. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Brennan, you have our one miscellaneous motion.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McGuire, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls award standing offer for engineering services treatment facilities RFP 19-PW-011 to RV Anderson Associates Limited EVB, JL Richards, EXP Services Incorporated. And further, the town, the council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute the final contract agreements for each of the 4 successful firms.
Any discussion, Councilor Brennan?
Manager Barlow explained that to us earlier, and this is going to make it ease of hiring firms. They're going to rotate for immediate needs for our facilities, treatment facilities.
No discussion? Moved by Councilor Brennan, second by Councilor McGuire, award of RFP 19-PW-011, standing offers for engineering services treatment facilities. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls awards standing offer for engineering services treatment facilities RFP 19-PW-011 to RV Anderson Associates Limited, EVB, JL Richards, and EXP Services, Inc., and further, the council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute the final contract agreements with each of the 4 successful firms. All in favor? Carried. Any inquiries or announcements? None. Motion for adjournment is with, oh, sorry, Councilor Allen. Just the last second.
I was at an event that was hosted at our church, the Trinity United Church, on Sunday. And at that time, the Continentals were playing for a number of people. It was a large audience, and we appreciated the music very much. But Dennis Staples, who is one of the lead singers, made a point of saying to me publicly that I should bring back to my colleagues how beneficial the on-the-roll money has been to the promotion of the arts and different events, and I promised I would do that. So On the Roll is a really successful amount of money that the Economic Development team hand out for events that have music or some kind of aspect of the arts in them. Could be dance or other things. So, and I don't know how much they've spent to date, but I think it's a lot of good money used well. So
Yes, support a lot of entertainment venues and experiences this summer. Councillor McGuire, you've got the motion for adjournment.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan that this council adjourn its proceedings at 8:33 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Adjournment. This council adjourns proceedings at 8:33 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We are adjourned.